Mamoswine is unable to battle. One punch. That's all it took. Price blinked, momentarily stunned as his mighty Mamoswine collapsed from Kubfu's strike. Without a word, he knelt beside it, fed it a revive, and recalled it into its pokeball. No time for hesitation. He reached for his next option and threw the second pokeball forward. From the burst of red light emerged a predator cloaked in menace, sleek, sharp, and cold. Its dark gray body rippled with tension, a blood-red crown on its head, and a golden gem glowing in its forehead. Clang! Weevil clashed its claws together, producing a piercing metallic screech. It smirked, flashing dagger-like teeth. Weevil, the sharp-claw Pokémon, Rotom chimed, the evolved form of Sneasel. Known for hunting in coordinated packs. Highly intelligent. Highly lethal. Ninetales stiffened. Oh, she remembered Weevil. Remembered running from the forests of Alola, where packs of Sneasel and Weevil would ambush lone Vulpix like her. Johan knelt and stroked her snowy fur. You want to face it? Ninetales slowly shook her head. No, not because she was afraid. Not anymore. She simply had nothing left to prove. Johan smiled. Fair enough. He called back Kubfu, who sleepily trotted over and high-fived the next contender, Charcadet. Goka. Charcadet stepped forward with fiery confidence. The battlefield began to heat up. Price narrowed his eyes. A fire type? Let's see what it can do, he muttered. Battle begin. Weevil fake out. In a blink, Weevil closed the distance and slammed its claws into Charcadet's chest. Bang! Charcadet flinched from the surprise attack. Follow up with Surf. Weevil spun, channeling a torrent of water from the nearby Lake of Rage. A powerful wave surged toward Charcadet. Johan's eyes narrowed. Surf? On a physical attacker like Weevil? A mixed attacker. How unusual. Charcadet. Goka. Charcadet shook off the flinch, and fire erupted from its body. Flame charge, dodge it. Whoosh. Charcadet zipped across the field, dodging the crashing wave as its speed surged. Price's brow twitched. It recovered from fake out that fast? Weevil Night Slash. With claws cloaked in dark energy, Weevil lunged. Charcadet wasn't fast enough to dodge again. Then don't dodge, Johan said. Flamethrower head on. Goka. A jet of flame roared from Charcadet's mouth. Quick attack. Evade it. Too late. Flames engulfed Weevil in a blinding burst of heat. The fire swirled, golden threads flickering within. Boom! A tower of fire exploded skyward. Charcadet's eyes flared, and it instinctively dodged to the side, just as Weevil burst through the fire, claw aimed for its throat. Bang! Charcadet skidded back, shoulder grazed, flames still dancing around it. Johan blinked in surprise. Weevil had survived that. Price stood calm but alert. Weevil's body was scorched and cracked, yet surrounded by a shimmering coat of rapidly melting ice. Johan's eyes widened. Of course. Eternal Ice Wall. Price's signature style, rapidly condensing moisture into thick, defensive layers of ice. A trick taken straight from the infamous Masked Man in the Pokémon Adventures manga. But Price, too, was watching carefully. Were those golden threads in the fire? Something about them reminded him of sacred fire. He pushed the thought aside as Johan gave the next command. Overheat. Charcadet roared. A scorching blast of fire exploded from its body, washing over the arena in a wave of crimson heat. The Lake of Rage shimmered red as steam rose. Weevil, blizzard cloak. Price snapped. Weevil spun, summoning a whirling veil of ice to shield itself. Fire met ice. The explosion of steam hissed and roared, swallowing both Pokémon in a blinding mist. When it cleared, Weevil was down. Charcadet panted hard, scorched and shaking, but still standing. Incredible, Johan whispered. Price's control over ice is unreal. Price frowned, visibly irked. Unreal? He had sensed sacred fire within those flames. That wasn't normal. And this was supposed to be a rookie trainer? Across the lake, on a distant hillside, a Pokémon wreathed in faint lightning watched the battle in silence. Price recalled Weevil without a word. His gaze turned to Johan, sharp and calculating. Show me your nine tails, he said quietly. Johan raised a brow. So that was the real reason for this battle. He almost considered refusing. After all, Price had been antagonizing his team nonstop. But then he remembered the revives. How Price immediately healed his fainted Pokémon after each round. He claimed not to bond with his team, but his actions said otherwise. You up for it? He asked Ninetales. Ooh. She nodded. The eternal ice wall intrigued her. It reminded her of snowmen and childhood. Go ahead. She helped Charcadet off the field before stepping into the cold. Price's last Pokeball opened. A haunting, elegant Pokémon emerged, white, ethereal, floating like a ghost in a kimono of frost. Frostless, the snow land Pokémon, an ice and ghost type, said to be the soul of a woman who perished in the snow. As Frostless took position, the air turned frigid. Snow began to fall. Johan immediately knew what was coming. Snow Cloak. Price had forced him to use Ninetales, only to bring out a counter built specifically for her. Johan glared at him. You sly old man. Frostless Blizzard. Ninetales imprisoned. What? Before Price could react, Ninetales raised her head and unleashed a wave of psychic energy, binding the battlefield. Johan smirked. And now, Aurora Vale. Ooh, Ninetales chanted, shimmering light forming a protective curtain of ice and magic around her. Price gritted his teeth. Frostless imprisoned now. Too late. The move was sealed. Both sides had locked each other down. Johan and Price stared at each other across the frozen field. A stalemate. A chess match of ice and wit. As rounds passed, Ninetales subtly outmaneuvered Frostless, layering buffs and dodging attacks with grace and ease. Eventually, Price exhaled sharply. That's enough. Frostless floated back to his side. Ninetales followed Johan, her icy veil melting away like mist. She's strong, Price admitted, and your training isn't bad. Johan snorted. Not bad? If we kept going, Ninetales would have flattened her. He didn't need to say it. He'd already won 2 out of 3 matches. So, I win. Price's jaw clenched, but he gave a slow nod. Fine, but don't think you can change me with one battle. Johan's eyes gleamed. We'll see. He paused, then added, I had a dream before coming to Mahogany. Price raised an eyebrow. A dream? Johan's voice dropped, calm and quiet. Ho-Oh came to me. It showed me a frozen Piloswine, trapped in ice while searching for herbs for its trainer. Price's eyes widened. His heart skipped a beat. That story, Johan wasn't lying. Price had felt it earlier, the sacred fire. Piloswine, he whispered, voice almost breaking. Really? Price's voice, already gravelly, dropped into a barely audible rasp. That's what the dream showed me, Johan replied with a solemn nod. His tone was firm, steady, believable. Kaka, Jengar murmured, tilting its head as it observed its trainer. If I didn't know him so well, even I'd have believed him. Johan continued. At the time, I didn't understand what the dream meant. But after hearing your story, Price, the pieces fell into place. Price's expression twisted, tension rippling across his weathered features. Where? He asked, voice now trembling. Johan didn't answer directly. He simply shook his head. I think you already know. Price's pupils shrank. A buried memory surfaced. Years ago, a desperate search for herbs to heal an injured Mamoswine. An avalanche. A valley lost beneath snow and silence. Wordlessly, Price wheeled himself forward. Faster than before. He ignored the snow crunching beneath his wheels, ignored the calls from behind. Price, wait. Jinx and Quagsire scrambled to catch up, but the old man was moving like a man possessed. Johan exhaled, exchanging a look with his team. Let's follow. Through forested paths and past a roaring waterfall, they came to the mouth of a steep, jagged cliff. A narrow crevice stretched below. Price began to rise from his wheelchair. Don't, Johan said, stepping in. Leave it to us. This wasn't a place for a man in a wheelchair. Not now. Johan turned to Dragonair and gave silent command with his eyes. Draw. Returning most of his team to their Pokeballs, Johan climbed onto Dragonair's back with a sigh. Why am I always doing stuff like this? Dragonair glanced over its shoulder, amused. Because you're you. The descent was swift, and soon Johan's feet touched cold, solid earth again. Caca. Jengar poked out of the nearby rock wall, pointing its claw. Tunnel ahead. This is it, Johan murmured. He stepped aside. Dragonair, Aqua Tail. Let's open it up. Dry. A swirl of water surrounded Dragonair's tail as it slammed into the rock, shattering the entrance. Charcadet emerged in a flash, its flickering flames casting light into the darkness. They walked deeper. The stone walls gradually transitioned into glimmering ice, smooth and blue like frozen glass. Caca. Jengar floated ahead, retrieving a tattered anklet from the ground. That confirms it, Johan whispered. This was the place. The cavern where Mamoswine had vanished all those years ago. As they moved deeper, Charcadet stopped. Its flames glowed brighter, guided by aura. Encased in the far wall of ice, massive, still, but unmistakable, was a Mamoswine. Bandages still clung to its fur. In its mouth, a bundle of dried herbs. Johan fell silent. He remembered this story from the anime, but seeing it firsthand, feeling it, it hit differently. His Pokémon silently emerged on their own. None made a sound. Their eyes were fixed on Mamoswine. Respect, sorrow, admiration. Would they go that far for him? Johan already knew the answer. They absolutely would. Ninetales pressed gently against his side, wrapping her tails around his arm. Jengar stood still, uncharacteristically serious. Johan placed a hand on Ninetales' head. Don't worry. I'm not like Price. I know when to push and when to stop. That much was true. Johan had refused Price's initial challenge because he knew it would be unwinnable. But now, his Pokémon made a silent promise. We'll never let you reach your limit. Not while we're with you. Mamoswine. It's really Mamoswine. Price's voice echoed through the tunnel. He had followed, despite the danger, supported by Jinx and Quagsire. Both wore the weary expressions of bodyguards who'd lost control of their VIP. When Price saw the frozen figure of his oldest companion, tears welled in his eyes. Mamoswine was still clutching the herbs, still trying to save him. Johan let out a slow breath. Let's get him out. Cha. Ticketon stepped forward eagerly, hefting her massive hammer. Whoa, no. Johan stopped her immediately. One wrong swing, and they'd be scraping Mamoswine off the walls. He looked around. Who could be gentle enough? His eyes settled on Charcadet. Charcadet, carefully. Melt the ice, slowly. Charcadet. Flames danced to life around it. This time, gentle, precise. Crack. A hairline fracture appeared across the ice. Be careful. Price barked, anxiety written all over his face. But Charcadet's control was perfect. Inch by inch, the ice melted. When Mamoswine was free, Johan gave another command. Dragonair, gentle thunderwave. Wake him. A soft electrical pulse drifted across Mamoswine's body. Moments later, the beast stirred. Mamoswine. Price limped forward, reaching out as tears streamed freely down his face. Mamoswine sniffed, then let out a soft grunt. It recognized him. They embraced, old man and old friend, while the world seemed to fall silent around them. Johan watched quietly. Frozen for decades, he murmured. Only alive thanks to its ice typing and that thick fur. His Pokémon wiped at their eyes. Even Jengar looked contemplative. Price held Mamoswine close, trembling with guilt and joy. And something in his heart thawed. For the first time in a long while, it truly thawed. But Johan's thoughts were elsewhere. If Price now believed in bonds again, would he also start remembering the pain? The loss of his two Lapras? Would he spiral, like the Price from the Pokémon Adventures manga? Johan shivered. No, the Pokémon world couldn't afford another masked man. Thank Arceus Price wasn't strong enough to catch Ho-Oh. Back at the cliffside, Price handed Johan an old scroll. Thank you, Johan, he said. This contains everything I know about ice types. Consider it a gift. Quagsire passed the scroll to Johan, who handed over a few poke blocks in return. Quagsire looked at Price, got a nod, and munched happily. Johan chuckled and patted its slick head. With this scroll, Ninetales' defensive techniques would reach a whole new level. What about you, Price? Johan asked. What's next? Price stared into the distance. Maybe it's time to reconnect. With Oak. With Agatha. With the old days. Johan felt the weight in his chest ease. If Price could reach out to Professor Oak, then maybe he really was starting to heal. They exchanged contact information, one last assurance that neither would disappear on the other again. Dragonair tugged on Johan's sleeve. He looked to the horizon. The golden light of sunset had vanished. In its place, storm clouds, thick and heavy, crackling with golden lightning. And they were coming fast. Johan's heart sank. He reached into his pocket and touched the rainbow wing. It pulsed faintly. He coughed in his sleeve, glancing sideways. It's probably here for you, Rotom. Rotom? Sigma. Olo.
Hey, everyone. If you enjoy my quantum audiobooks, you can support me by becoming a Patreon member. Your support helps me keep creating, and you'll get exclusive perks. You can also access my audiobooks directly through Google Drive. Check out the link in the description. Now, let's get started.
The thunderclouds rolled closer, accompanied by an overwhelming sense of pressure. Beneath them, a golden figure dashed toward their location, moving at incredible speed. Its appearance resembled that of a saber-toothed tiger, with golden fur, muscular limbs, and sharp fangs. A black, steel-like crest adorned its forehead, framed by X-shaped whiskers. Its back was covered in a flowing cloud-like mane, while its tail resembled a crackling bolt of lightning. The approaching figure was none other than Raikou, one of the 3 legendary beasts of Oreburgh. Upon seeing the approaching Raikou, Price's pupils shrank slightly, and his face showed a trace of astonishment. Raikou, even Price, seasoned as he was, hadn't expected to encounter Raikou here. Johan, on the other hand, wore a look of helpless resignation. It was only a matter of time. Raikou showing up now was within Johan's expectations. Having already encountered Sukun and Nti, and earning their recognition, Johan wasn't too nervous about this final encounter. As Raikou drew closer, thunder rumbled through the air, and the heavy storm clouds loomed low, threatening to descend upon them. Why does it feel like it's coming with hostility? Johan muttered under his breath. Buzz. Johan immediately felt the rainbow wing in his pocket begin to glow rapidly, as though warning him of something. This forced Johan to be more cautious. The next moment, boom! A golden bolt of lightning descended from the heavens, striking the ground in front of Johan and leaving a smoldering black crater in its wake. At this, Jengar and the others tensed up, quickly forming a protective line in front of Johan. Did you somehow offend Raikou? Price asked, frowning. I don't think so, Johan replied, though he wasn't entirely certain. Raikou's demeanor made it clear it was here for a fight. That first bolt of lightning, which deliberately missed, wasn't a mistake. It was a warning. The next strike wouldn't miss. Was this because Raikou had sensed Johan's use of aura to activate the rainbow wing? If that were the case, shouldn't Marshadao be the one to confront him instead of Raikou? Or could this be another trial for the rainbow hero? When Suicune appeared, it hadn't attacked. When Nti appeared, it only clashed briefly with Sharkaday's flames. And now Raikou had arrived, seemingly eager for battle. Why did Ash get a pass with just a meeting? Double standards, huh? Regardless, Raikou had come for a fight. We might have to battle this time, Johan said in a low voice. Stay alert. Kaka. Jengar nodded seriously, while the others prepared themselves as well. From Raikou's presence, they could all feel an immense threat. Meanwhile, Price observed Johan and Raikou, his gaze shifting between the two. Do you need my help? Price offered. Logically speaking, someone recognized by NEI and even granted the power of sacred fire shouldn't be antagonized by Raikou. In fact, Price could sense Raikou's overwhelming presence, but no malice from it. Johan shook his head. Not for now. His rejection stemmed partly from the lack of hostility he sensed from Raikou through aura. It was also because, moments earlier, the Pokédex had updated Raikou's information. Raikou. Type, electric. Ability, pressure. Moves, Leer Charge, Extreme Speed, Thundershock, Quick Attack, Spark, Bite, Calm Mind, Roar, Thunderfang. Mood, excited. Finally, another rainbow wing chosen one. Status, excellent. Friendship level, 30. It has no hostility toward you and even carries some goodwill. No hostility, but it wanted to fight. Clearly, this was another trial. If that was the case, Johan couldn't back down. Taking a deep breath, Johan began barking orders. Toxic Hypnosis Will-O-Wisp. Tinkaton Swords Dance. Kubfu Ready Detect. Dragonair Use Dragon Dance. Even Price couldn't hide his astonishment at the seamless flow of Johan's commands. He had to admit, Johan had exceptional talent for directing battles with multiple Pokémon simultaneously. Defense, debuffs, crowd control, and offense, all angles were covered. While Johan's strategies weren't yet a fully developed system, it was clear he excelled at fighting dirty. This level of control would have been impressive even among Price's generation. Kaka. Jengar opened a rift and disappeared into it, reappearing behind Raikou. It spat a viscous, toxic substance that splattered onto Raikou, turning its fur a faint purple. Ooh! Ninetales' eyes glowed blue, casting hypnosis. The drowsiness briefly disrupted Raikou's stride, making it stumble. Charcadet seized the opportunity to unleash bursts of flame, which exploded on Raikou's body, leaving singed patches of fur. Gar! Raikou growled, stunned by the swift assault. It had given Johan ample warning, but hadn't expected him to strike so decisively the moment its intentions were clear. Gar! Raikou roared, its body crackling with electricity. Snakes of lightning lashed out, scattering across the area. The electric surge disrupted Jengar's poison and shook off Ninetales' hypnotic influence. Meanwhile, Tinkaton gleamed as it completed Sword's Dance, and Dragonair soared higher, finishing its Dragon Dance. Johan remained composed. Dragonair, extreme speed into Dragon Rush. Kubfu, get ready to guide the attack. Ninetales, use Helping Hand. Dragonair ascended and cloaked itself in a shimmering blue-purple dragon aura. With a burst of speed, it dove straight toward Raikou. Simultaneously, Kubfu's Detect and Ninetales' Helping Hand enhanced its precision and impact. Boom! Dragonair struck Raikou head-on, slamming it into the ground and leaving it briefly immobilized. Now Tinkaton, Gigaton Hammer. Cha! As Dragonair retreated, Tinkaton charged forward, hammer raised high. Its weapon gleamed with metallic brilliance as it slammed it down onto Raikou. Crash! The ground fractured under the force of the blow, and Raikou, still recovering, found itself dazed once again. Charcadet, overheat. Kaka, hypnosis again. Johan's Pokémon unleashed a relentless barrage of attacks, exploiting every opportunity to overwhelm Raikou. By now, Price was wiping sweat from his forehead, his face pale. Dear Lord, this wasn't a battle, it was an ambush. Every one of Johan's Pokémon had at least one crowd control move, and they executed them with flawless timing. Raikou, a legendary Pokémon, had barely had a chance to respond. Damn, Raikou's defenses are insane, Johan muttered. Price, you're actually trying to take down Raikou. Suddenly, Raikou roared with a deafening thunderclap, sending waves of lightning radiating outward. The golden light blinded everyone, forcing Johan to yell, Defend. Using Protect, Substitutes, and Detect, Johan's team managed to shield themselves. Thankfully, Ninetales' Aurora Veil softened the impact, giving everyone enough time to recover. But Johan noticed something on Raikou's Pokédex entry. Mood. Furious. To heck with the Chosen One. Johan. After a tense pause, Johan subtly grabbed the Mega Evolution pendant dangling from his glasses, prepared to activate Jengar's Mega Evolution if necessary. Raikou glared at Johan, its mane crackling with lightning. Johan forced a sheepish grin. You're the one who wanted to fight. After staring him down for 3 seconds, Raikou let out one final roar. The storm clouds above scattered, and it disappeared in a flash of golden light, vanishing over the horizon. As it left, the Pokédex updated again. Mood. Frustrated. What are you even guarding with this nonsense? It's gone. Johan asked, confused. I think so, Price replied, his voice dry. Meanwhile, Tinkaton nudged Johan's arm with a sly grin and opened its hand. Resting in its palm was a shiny, golden object. Johan's jaw dropped. Reiku had been pickpocketed. What is this? It looked somewhat like a golden thunderstone, but it was clearly different from the usual thunderstones. It seemed to be something unique to Reiku, much like Suikun's North Wind or Any Eye's Flames. Tinkaton scratched its head, indicating it wasn't entirely sure either. Apparently, when it had swung its Gigaton hammer earlier, it had somehow snatched this item from Reiku's body. It had been hiding it ever since, afraid Reiku might notice. Only after Reiku left did it finally take it out. Johan, was this literal pickpocketing? It had even managed to snag something off a legendary Pokémon. Typically, items like Megastones, Arceus's plates, or Zacian and Zamazenta's swords and shields couldn't be taken using moves like Thief. So how did Tinkaton manage it? Wait, if Jengar swapped abilities with Tinkaton, wouldn't it also be able to swipe something off those Pokémon? This came from Reiku? Even Price couldn't help but glance at the golden item Tinkaton handed over to Johan. It's a gift from Reiku, Johan replied with a straight face. Price, that fight earlier didn't exactly scream friendly. Reiku didn't strike him as the type to hand out gifts. Any Eye's Flame probably wasn't gifted like that either. Price had thought he had a decent grasp of Johan's personality by now, but now he realized he didn't understand Johan at all. Rotom, it's yours. Johan casually tossed the golden item to his Rotom Dex. For me, Rotom. Rotom stammered in disbelief as it caught the item. Of course, Johan said matter-of-factly. Do we have any other electric types? Kaka, Jengar, and the others all chimed in agreement. They didn't mind. As long as Rotom Dex could keep their devices charged later, they were happy. But isn't that too precious for a Dex? Price couldn't help but ask. His tone was mild, but his meaning was clear. Rotom Dex wasn't exactly a battler. Was it worth giving something so valuable to it? Johan simply smiled. Price, not every Pokémon needs to fight to be considered family. As he spoke, Johan picked up Rotom Dex and playfully scrolled through its screen, making Rotom laugh and squirm in his hands. Besides, Rotom works hard for us too. It cleans the house, helps with cooking, takes pictures, and powers all our gadgets on trips. It's earned this. Jengar and the rest of Johan's Pokémon nodded in agreement. Rotom, / Rotom Dex squirmed in Johan's hands, its screen flickering bashfully. But deep down it felt warm. Even though it didn't enjoy battling, it still wanted to protect Johan. If danger ever struck, it would stand as the last line of defense, no matter what. Hearing this exchange, Price froze. He looked at Johan and his team, then at his own Pokémon. Finally, a rare smile crept across his face. I've learned something today, he said quietly. For the first time, Price felt like he understood why so many people called Johan teacher. Though Johan's approach to training was pure, his methods in battle were less so. Before Johan left, Price handed him the Glacier Badge from the Mahogany Gym. It wasn't exactly a formal victory, but Price felt it was well-deserved. As Jengar proudly stashed the badge away, Johan realized something. Wait a minute, he muttered. I've got 3 Johto badges now. Pallet Town, Oak Laboratory. Grandpa, the phone's ringing. Blue called out, juggling a stack of reports while holding the phone in his other hand. Coming. Professor Oak hurried over with a bowl of instant noodles in hand. You couldn't just use the stove? Why are you always using alcohol burners? Blue asked, extinguishing the flame. You wouldn't understand. Instant noodles cooked over an alcohol burner just taste better. Oak replied with a chuckle, slurping a bite as he reached for the phone. Hello, this is Professor Oak, he answered cheerfully. Snowtree, it's me. Hearing the familiar voice, Oak froze for a moment, then exclaimed, Price, you're still the same as ever, Snowtree. Always so excitable, Price teased. What's the occasion? I hear you sent Johan my way. As Price spoke, he recounted his encounter with Johan, his battles, and even the rediscovery of his long-lost Mamoswine. So you lost, huh? Oak chuckled. Was it a clean sweep? Oh, 2 losses and a tie? Close enough. Nearby, Blue perked up, catching parts of the conversation. Johan had battled Price, and apparently handed him a humiliating defeat. He clenched his fists in excitement. Johan's getting stronger and stronger, he muttered. One day I'll challenge him to Blackthorn City, Dragon Den. Back in Johto, Johan and Dragonair returned to Blackthorn City. Back home again, Dragonair. How does it feel? Johan asked with a grin. Dragonair chirped, beaming with excitement. It had been looking forward to showing its progress to its father, the Dragonite who guarded the Dragon Den. Noticing this, Johan chuckled. Let's go then, he said. No point holding back. Blackthorn Gym leader Claire soon appeared, her expression souring when she spotted Johan. You again, she snapped, gripping her whip. Johan rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. I'm just passing through, he said quickly. Claire huffed, but eventually agreed to escort him to the Dragon Den. Upon arriving, they were greeted by the serene sight of the sacred Dragon Den. Lush fields, clear streams, and dragons of all shapes and sizes frolicking freely. Among them, one Dragonite soared through the sky, casting a mighty shadow over the land. Dragonair called out to its father. The Dragonite turned, its golden eyes locking onto Dragonair. For a moment, it seemed to smile, and then, with a roar, it dove straight down, aiming a fist at Dragonair's head. Boom! Dragonite's fist was met with Dragonair's tail in a powerful clash, echoing a dull thud. Dragonite's eyes flashed with surprise, sensing the strength transmitted through Dragonair's tail. Not bad at all. Dragonair let out a low cry, showing no surprise at Dragonite's sudden attack. In fact, within that moment of collision, it became clear just how much it had grown. Back when it was a Dragonite, it had grown carefree in the Dragon's Den, idolizing Dragonite, its father. Every time Dragonite battled, no matter the opponent, it would dominate without question. Dragonite was the undisputed protector of the Dragon's Den. Naturally, young Dragonite wanted to become like Dragonite. But no matter how hard it tried back then, Dragonite would only pat its head gently in response. It was as if, in Dragonite's eyes, Dragonite would always be the little kid, not yet worthy of a proper challenge. But now, returning to the Dragon's Den, it was greeted not with a head pat, but with a fist. For Dragonair, this meant it had finally earned the right to battle Dragonite. Dragonair roared with determination. Johan, watching this unfold, couldn't help but ask, "What's going on here?" "It's a tradition," answered Claire curtly. The dragons of the Dragon's Den were strong because they fought their way to strength. Johan blinked, puzzled. A tradition? Fathers sparring with their kids? So Lance beating you up regularly is also part of the family tradition. Huh? To Johan, this was more like a father testing his child after they'd been away to see how much they'd grown. Well, if that's the case, I guess it makes sense. Johan could feel the fiery determination in Dragonair. Suddenly, Dragonite roared, its gaze sharp and intense. The small wings on its back beat furiously, whipping up waves of white currents. At the same time, its energy surged dramatically. Dragon Dance. It was serious now. Johan tensed, but before he could react, Claire interrupted sharply. Don't get involved. Stay out of it. In the air, the short white wings near Dragonair's head quickly grew larger, beating to create its own swirling winds. With a sleek and graceful movement, it chased after Dragonite. It was using Dragon Dance too. The two dragons ascended in spirals, their silhouettes outlined by the bright sunlight and casting huge shadows onto the ground below. The commotion drew the attention of the den's smaller Pokémon, who paused to watch. Dragonair roared again, its body glowing with a dazzling white light as it streaked toward Dragonite like a speeding arrow. Extreme speed. Dragonite's gaze was stern but carried a hint of mockery. With a flap of its wings, it too was wrapped in a layer of white light, pausing briefly midair before charging straight at Dragonair. It also used extreme speed. Boom! The two dragons collided in midair, creating a deafening explosion that rippled out in waves of white energy. The shockwaves shook the trees of the den, rustling leaves and scattering petals. Grass and flowers flattened in ripples across the ground. Dra! Dragonair cried out in pain as it was flung backward, tumbling uncontrollably through the air. Dragonite hovered where it was, watching Dragonair spin away. With a slight nod of approval, it suddenly moved again. Rah! Dragonite roared and covered itself in a cloak of deep blue and purple energy before diving straight at the falling Dragonair. Dragon Rush! Dragonair, still disoriented, felt Dragonite closing in fast. It flapped its wings desperately, managing to stabilize itself just enough. Then it too summoned a cloak of energy, refusing to back down as it turned to meet Dragonite's charge head-on. Seeing this, Johan couldn't remain silent. Dragonair, dodge with extreme speed, he shouted. Without hesitation, Dragonair's energy coat disappeared, and it turned into a streak of white light, narrowly dodging Dragonite's Dragon Rush. Boom! Dragonite crashed into the ground with a thunderous impact. Dragonair returned to Johan's side, panting slightly. Thud! Johan gave Dragonair a light knock on the head. I've been teaching you for ages, and you've forgotten everything. Huh? Why are you trying to go head-to-head with Dragonite? You know it has the multi-scale ability. Dragonair winced, letting out a sheepish laugh. Got a little carried away, okay? Johan. Dragonite climbed out of the crater, its calm gaze sweeping between Johan and Dragonair. It nodded slightly. All right, you two can come with me together. You? Claire opened her mouth to object, but the elder of the dragon clan appeared silently beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder with a smile. Elder! The elder gestured for her to keep watching. Johan and Dragonair exchanged a glance. No words were needed. Johan then turned to Dragonite and locked eyes with it. The unspoken message in Dragonite's gaze was clear. Show me your progress. Dragonite roared and unleashed a stream of blazing dragon breath at them. So, you want to see progress? Johan clenched his fist and shouted, Dragon Dance. Dragonair soared into the sky, twisting gracefully to dodge the incoming dragon breath by mere inches. Dragonite's eyes flickered with surprise, but flapped its wings again, chasing after Dragonair relentlessly. Use agility and climb higher. Wind currents surrounded Dragonair as its speed increased with each beat of its wings. From a distance, Dragonair looked like a sleek white arrow cutting through the sky. Dragonite, realizing it was falling behind, prepared to use agility as well. But just then, extreme speed. Strike it back. Dragonair pivoted sharply, turning mid-flight. Its body shimmered with white light as it streaked past Dragonite. Boom! With two boosts from Dragon Dance, enhanced agility, and the speed from extreme speed, the sheer momentum converted directly into raw power. Dragonite faltered midair, thrown slightly off balance. Interesting. Dragonite smirked faintly before its expression hardened. Dark red energy surged around it, veins bulging as its eyes grew bloodshot. Outrage activated. This wasn't just any outrage. It was controlled. Dragonair shuddered as Dragonite closed in at blinding speed. Use Protect. Johan shouted. Boom! The protective green barrier shattered instantly, and Dragonair was sent hurtling to the ground like a cannonball. Dragonair landed heavily, stirring up clouds of dust. Tap, tap. Dragonite landed as well, the red energy of outrage still coursing around it. It looked down at Johan and Dragonair, nodding again. All right, this progress will do. But Dragonair wasn't satisfied. It let out a defiant roar, glaring at Dragonite with determination. Johan sighed. Fine, at least block its full-strength attack once, and you'll feel better. Faced with this situation, there was only one solution. Dragonair, Johan called. Dragonair turned to look at him. Their eyes met, and understanding passed between them. Johan gave a small nod. Dragonair grinned. Ever since it left the dragon's den to follow Johan, it had never faced anything alone. Suddenly, Dragonair began to glow. What's this? Claire gasped. An evolution? The Pokeballs on Johan's belt burst open, releasing his team. One by one, his Pokemon appeared, watching as Dragonair was enveloped in light. Kaka! They cheered. Let's go Dragonair. This year, the title of Dragon King is ours. Boom! The glow vanished, leaving a magnificent orange Dragonite in its place, its form brimming with overwhelming strength and determination. Dragonair had evolved into Dragonite. The Dragon King had been reborn. Dragonite spread its arms and wings wide, unleashing a mighty roar that shook the den. Opposite it, the other Dragonite stared in stunned silence before its own battle spirit reignited. Good. Excellent. Let's finish this. Dark red energy surged once more. Johan smirked. Dragonite, he called out sharply. Outrage. And so, the two Dragonite clashed in a storm of power. The Dragon King's crown was back where it belonged. Dragonite contentedly patted its belly. All full now. Nearby, Claire stared at the massive pile of empty plates with sweat running down her brow. Does it always eat this much? Johan wiped his forehead and replied, Not always. But today, since someone else is paying, I guess it decided to let loose. Back when Dragonite was still a Dragonair, its appetite wasn't anywhere near this frightening. But today, it had just evolved into Dragonite, fought a grueling battle with the Sanctuary's Dragonite, burned through a ton of stamina, and even pushed itself to use Outrage. And more importantly, this was the Dragon Clan's treat, so of course, it went all out. Its appetite was practically rivaling Jengar's now. Dragonite picked at its teeth with a claw, grinning and muttering softly to itself. All full, but plain berries just don't taste as good as Johan's energy cubes. Claire, she'd previously been curious as to why Johan's Dragonair had grown so much larger than normal Dragonairs. Now, she wasn't curious anymore. With an appetite like that, how could it not grow big? And not just Dragonite. All of Johan's Pokemon were a handful. As soon as they heard someone else was paying, they acted like they hadn't eaten in 2 weeks. Especially Jengar. Claire had to wonder if it was really eating or just stuffing food away into some hidden dimension in its belly. But the Dragon Clan elder didn't mind at all. He even laughed and said, A good appetite is a blessing. Let the little ones eat their fill. No way a few Pokemon are going to empty the Dragon Clan's coffers. The Sanctuary's Dragonite, having also eaten its fill, gave Johan's Dragonite an approving pat on the shoulder. Dragonite's growth and progress had earned its satisfaction. Dragonite smiled bashfully. The two Dragonites sat together, and for the first time, everyone noticed the size difference between them. During the fight, it wasn't as obvious since the exchanges were so fast. But now, sitting side by side, Johan's Dragonite was noticeably taller, by an entire head. Its body and limbs were also bulkier, and it carried a bit more weight. Truly big-boned. Even Johan couldn't help but give Dragonite's bouncy, squishy belly a playful pat. The texture was amazing. If he ever laid down to nap on Dragonite's stomach, it would probably be the comfiest bed ever. Soft, cool, and just the right amount of bounce, better than any summer mattress. Dragonite immediately vowed to turn all that fluff into muscle. Johan chuckled and said, No need for that. I like you just the way you are. His view of Dragonite's stats appeared in his mind. Dragonite. Type, Dragon/Flying. Ability, Multi-Scale. Moves, Extreme Speed, Supersonic Wrap, Leer, Twister, Thunderwave, Dragon Tail, Slam, Aqua Tail, Safeguard, Hydro Pump, Thunderbolt, Icy Wind, Dragon Rush, Outrage. Mood. Happy. I've finally evolved. I'm a proper Pokemon with arms now. Condition. Excellent. Outrage isn't something to use casually. It takes a toll on the body. Friendship level. 100. I need to lose weight. The power boost from evolution was obvious. As the final stage of a pseudo-legendary Pokemon, Dragonite's strength had surprised even Johan. But what really stood out was its ability to use Outrage. In the Pokemon world, a dragon's Outrage was a symbol of its potential and the strength of its bloodline. The drawback, however, was significant. Using outrage often sent the Pokémon into a state of uncontrollable rage or confusion, and they couldn't stop until the move naturally ended. But the Sanctuary's Dragonite had shown Johan what controlled outrage looked like. Under its guidance, Johan's Dragonite had already begun to show faint signs of mastering a similar technique. That was what truly stunned Claire and the Dragon Clan Elder. Johan couldn't help but wonder, if outrage typically lasted 2 or 3 turns, could there be a second gear, outrage, or a third gear? Monkey D, Dragonite. Draw. The Sanctuary's Dragonite continued explaining the finer points of outrage, and Johan's Dragonite nodded eagerly, fully absorbed. One willing to teach, and one eager to learn. Johan was starting to feel a bit nervous about where this might lead. Training this move? Wouldn't it end up wrecking his home? Guess there was no choice. He'd have to rely on the facilities at Oreburgh Academy. Wait, or maybe a gym or tournament venue. Johan's eyes lit up at the thought. Noticing his expression, Claire instinctively tightened her grip on the whip at her hip, staring at him with suspicion. "Were you planning, you weirdo?" Cha-cha. Standing proudly on Dragonite's back, Tinkaton was nearly vibrating with excitement. The dream of becoming a Dragon Knight had finally come true. Draw. After a brief flight around the sanctuary with Tinkaton riding proudly, Dragonite landed back on the ground with a resounding thud. Cha! That was amazing. Tinkaton adjusted her twin ponytails, looking thrilled. With Dragonite's speed and Tinkaton's strength, the two could probably flatten an entire hill with ease. If it had a cape, it'd look even cooler. Johan suddenly froze mid-thought. Wait a second. Was this why Lance always wore cape? Draw. After Tinkaton hopped down, Dragonite gestured for Johan to climb on. Seeing Dragonite's eager eyes, Johan hesitated. He wanted to refuse, but this was Dragonite's big day. It had just evolved. He didn't want to disappoint it. After some internal conflict, he sighed and climbed onto its back. Compared to Dragonair, whose slippery, smooth body made for a tricky ride, Dragonite's back was spacious and stable, providing proper footholds. And thanks to its broad body, Dragonite shielded Johan from most of the high-altitude winds. The only issue was the speed. After a single lap around the sanctuary, Johan stumbled off Dragonite's back, his face pale. Dragonite tilted its head, looking concerned. "I'm fine," Johan said with a shaky laugh. "I just need to rest a bit." Claire raised an eyebrow, her tone skeptical. "You're not afraid of heights, are you?" "Of course not. You're afraid of heights. Your whole family's afraid of heights." Johan shot back indignantly. He wasn't scared, it was just flying that high and that fast was a lot to take in. Still, if he kept riding Dragonite, he'd probably get used to it eventually. With a partner like Dragonite, it would be a waste not to take advantage of such a comfortable ride. Honestly, what other flying Pokémon could compare to Dragonite in terms of sheer coziness? Draw. The Sanctuary's Dragonite reappeared after its meal, tossing a dragon fong to Johan's Dragonite before giving it a final pat and a wave. It was time to leave the nest. With a trainer like Johan and such dependable teammates, the Sanctuary's Dragonite was fully confident in its offspring's future. Dragonite held the dragon fong close and nodded solemnly. Johan patted its arm with a grin. "All right, let's go conquer the seas and become Pirate King." Dragonite. Oreburgh City, Hoenn, a cafe. Ninetales, Jengar, be careful. In a cafe's backyard, Johan couldn't help but remind them. "Uwu, Kaka." The two Pokémon nodded seriously, carefully pulling out one black and one white radish from the flower bed. After flying back from Johto to Hoenn and returning to the cafe, Johan had learned from NDD that the black and white radishes he had planted in the garden were likely ripe. Thus, here they were now. Ninetales and Jengar each pulled out a radish from the snowy and shadowy soils, respectively. The ice radish looked like a frozen crystal, faintly radiating a chill. Instead of white, it had a light blue hue with vibrant green leaves. The dark radish, on the other hand, was truly black, its shape less defined and more like a bundle of roots. "Looks like they're ready, right?" The two Pokémon looked expectantly at Johan, who rubbed his chin and replied uncertainly. He took the radishes from their hands and examined them closely. "Well, there's one way to find out," Johan said, brushing the dirt and frost off the ice radish as he prepared to take a bite. "Ooh." Ninetales tilted its head, blinking in confusion. "You're really going to eat it?" Johan froze and licked his lips awkwardly. "Yeah, maybe not. After all, these were no ordinary radishes. In legend, the ice and dark radishes were said to be the preferred food of Glastrier and Spectrier, Calyrex's legendary steeds. Such a delicacy. Even legendary Pokémon crave them. Who knew what effect eating them raw might have? "Let's cook them properly instead," Johan decided. Ninetales, Jengar, grab a few more. With a handful of 3 sturdy ice radishes and 3 shriveled-looking dark radishes, Johan headed into the kitchen. Although the ice radish looked like a translucent chunk of ice, it was essentially a vegetable. Once peeled, the inside revealed a soft, light blue flesh. The dark radish was similar. Peeling away the outer layer revealed an inky black core. "Let's make radish rice cakes," Johan decided. First, he peeled and sliced all the radishes, steamed them until soft, and mashed them into a smooth puree. Next, he added sugar, 2 spoonfuls of glutinous rice flour, and a spoonful of cornstarch, mixing until the dough was moist yet firm. He divided the dough into smaller portions, adding fillings like red dates and other berries for flavor, then steamed the cakes to perfection. Since ice and dark radishes might not suit everyone's palate, Johan also made a few rice cakes flavored with berries for the rest of his Pokémon. While Johan and Rotom worked in the kitchen, Jengar and the rest of the gang headed back to the garden for training and playtime. Dragonite looked up at the ceiling, relieved to find it wasn't as low as it feared. Thankfully, Johan had anticipated its evolution and rented a house with high ceilings. Otherwise, Dragonite might have had to spend its days hunched over. Most Dragonites stood around 7 feet 3 inches, 2.2 meters tall, but Johan's Dragonite was over 8 feet 2 inches, 2.5 meters, and noticeably bulkier. With its sheer size and strength, its Dragon Rush was bound to be at least 20% more powerful than the average Dragonites. And with its speed factored in, using the formula P equals mv, more mass and velocity meant exponentially greater momentum. Truly a living bombshell. Caca. Suddenly, Jengar's eyes narrowed, and it flashed a mischievous grin before vanishing into the shadows. At the same time, a figure stirred in the shadows by the garden wall. It was Marshadao. Its slender black form stretched out in the shade, and its flickering flame-like eyes burned faintly. It was exhausted. Marshadao had traveled tirelessly from Johto to Hoenn, sticking to the shadows, just to observe Johan. Marcia, so tired. It had to keep an eye on the holder of the rainbow wing to determine if this person was truly worthy of being the rainbow hero. Caca. Suddenly, Marshadao felt a tap on its shoulder. Startled, it whipped around. Jengar was there, smiling cheekily at it. Busted. Panic flashed in Marshado's eyes. How had it been caught so easily? Was it the fatigue? Was it? Caca. Jengar pulled out a handful of energy cubes and offered them to Marshadao. Hungry? Have some snacks. Marshadao tensed, backing away cautiously, but it soon realized it was surrounded. Ninetales, Tinkaton, Dragonite, Cubfu, Charcadet, and Jengar had encircled it, cutting off all escape routes. Marcia, Sigma, lol. 6 against 1? This wasn't fair. Images of Reiku's recent defeat played in its mind, and cold sweat ran down its face. If only it hadn't used up so much energy chasing Johan across regions. Jengar squinted at Marshadao, glanced at its energy cubes, and tilted its head. Caca, don't want it? Marcia, was that a question or a threat? Marshadao shivered. This Jengar was just like Johan. Impossible to tell if it was being kind or menacing. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Johan paused as he felt something. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out the glowing rainbow wing. Hungry again? He infused it with a pulse of aura, and the glow subsided. Shaking his head, Johan muttered, This thing sure eats fast. Still, he couldn't deny that the rainbow wing had helped him train his aura. Compared to when he first awakened it, his aura powers had grown significantly. One day, I'll be throwing aura spheres left and right. Ding! Time's up, Rotom. Rotom's cheerful voice snapped him out of his thoughts. It's ready. Johan retrieved the freshly steamed radish rice cakes, carefully plating the soft treats. When he stepped into the living room, he paused. The Pokémon weren't there. They must have still been in the garden. Well then, he said with a grin, picking up a rice cake. Guess I'll try it first. He started with an ice radish rice cake, figuring his ice resistance should be decent enough. Taking a small bite, his eyes lit up. Hot, cold, sweet, chewy, every texture and flavor blended perfectly. It was like eating baked ice cream. Delicious. Handing a dark radish rice cake to Rotom, Johan said, You've earned it, Rotom. Thank you. So good, Rotom. Johan headed to the garden with a platter of rice cakes, only to find his Pokémon encircling Marshadao. When the Pokémon saw him, they cheered and rushed over, eager for the treats. Marshadao, meanwhile, froze as Johan approached. Marshadao. Johan raised an eyebrow. What was Marshadao doing here? It should be in Johto, or maybe Kanto at most. Had Ho-Oh expanded its jurisdiction? Still, he wasn't too shocked. He'd already sensed Marshado's presence back in Blackthorn City. Smiling, Johan held out a dark radish rice cake. Want to try? Freshly made. Marshado's eyes locked onto the rice cake, its flickering flames glowing brighter. As a mythical ghost Pokémon, it could sense the unique spectral energy within the cake, an irresistible allure. Seeing Johan's Pokémon eagerly devouring the treats, Marshadao hesitated for only a moment before carefully taking a bite. Marsha! Its eyes widened in delight. The rice cake wasn't just delicious. It was rich in energy, restoring its strength with every bite. Seeing Marshado's reaction, Johan chuckled. He'd done a good job with the flavor, but the radishes themselves were the real stars. After all, even Glastrier and Spectrier couldn't resist them. Marshado's gaze grew resolute. Marsha! No, such dangerous food couldn't be allowed to harm other Pokémon. For the sake of justice, it would stay here and eat every last piece. The ever-noble Marshadao. Sunday, clear skies. At Rustboro Pokémon Academy, the campus was quieter than usual after classes had officially ended. In the Pokémon world, winter and summer vacations lasted for about 2 months. However, some diligent students still came to the Academy's training grounds daily for personal practice after their coursework. Today, Johan returned to the Academy to train with his Pokémon. Marshado's gone? Kaka. Jengar shrugged, indicating that it wasn't sure. After eating the radish mochi yesterday, Marshadao disappeared, but Jengar sensed that it might have just temporarily hidden itself. Odds were it would pop back up the next time there was food, particularly something delicious. Johan nodded. That matched his guess. Marshado's still a bit shy, huh? Johan mused aloud. Far away, hidden in the shadows of a corner, a pair of orange glowing eyes peeked out. Emerging from the darkness, Marshadao put on a resolute and determined expression. This bearer of the rainbow wing could only be kept in check by someone as capable as me, the great Shadow Guide. For the sake of the Pokémon world and to fulfill Ho-Oh's sacred mission, I, Marshadao, must carefully watch over him. Its inner resolve strengthened. Marshadao gave a firm nod. Though, truth be told, part of its motivation was to see what delicious food Johan would make next. At the training grounds, Jengar, Ninetales, feeling all right? Johan asked, looking at his Pokémon. Kaka. Uwu. Jengar and Ninetales shook their heads, signaling they felt fine. It seemed the ice and black radishes hadn't caused any negative side effects for them, meaning the crops could be cultivated on a larger scale. To be fair, both radishes had excellent taste. No wonder Glastrier and Spectrier were so keen on them. Clapping his hands, Johan began assigning today's training tasks. After their Johto expedition, each of his Pokémon had made progress and now had areas to work on. Ninetales had mastered Perpetual Ice Wall, pairing it with the Snowstorm's defense boost and Aurora Veil to become the team's strongest defensive member. However, perfecting the technique would take time. Luckily, the work aligned with Ninetales' love for making snowmen and ice sculptures. Dragonair, now the Dragonite, was Johan's most dramatically changed Pokémon. Its massive growth meant it had the heaviest training load to help it adapt to its new body and master techniques like controlled outrage. Charcadet had gained Inti's blessing, channeling a portion of sacred fire. It now had more energy and could unleash stronger fire-type moves. The Academy's facilities were perfect for its training. Jengar had already learned Phantom Force, but refining its proficiency would require more battles. As for Tinkaton, it was still studying the blueprints for crafting the scared wood Johan had acquired in Johto. When the time came, it could forge the weapon Charcadet needed for its evolution. During their warm-up drills, Cubful walked among its teammates with its hands behind its back, pointing out flaws in their stances. As the group's coach, Cubful took its job seriously, showcasing its rock-solid fundamentals as it provided feedback to each Pokémon. Training could be monotonous, but with Jengar in a mix, it was anything but dull. For instance, Jengar pulled Dragonite aside to whisper conspiratorially, "The instant noodles the other night did have seasoning packets. What went missing was the fork. Don't let Johan fool you." Later, Jengar gathered Tinkaton, Cubfu, and Charcadet to scheme about creating an armor squad. It imagined itself as the cunning leader, Tinkaton as the noble second-in-command, Cubfu as the valiant warrior, and Charcadet as the fiery spearhead of the team. Johan, overhearing this, began to suspect Jengar had been listening to too many Three Kingdoms stories. Yet, with Jengar providing comedic relief, training sessions were filled with as much laughter as effort, which suited Johan just fine. Days passed. After several intense training sessions, the Academy informed Johan that their facilities were undergoing renovations and would be temporarily unavailable. The news was delivered by Martin, the head of the Academy's administrative office. Johan didn't mind. That's good news. Some of the facilities were a little outdated, too fragile. It's unsafe. Martin's expression twitched slightly. In truth, Rustboro Academy was one of the most well-funded institutions, with relatively modern facilities. The issue wasn't the equipment, it was Johan's Pokémon, who seemed to demolish everything in sight. Fortunately, the Academy's president had connections and pulled strings to secure state-of-the-art upgrades, including the latest protective barriers used in official tournaments and gym battles. The renovations would take time, so for now, Johan had to find alternative training options. Should I challenge gyms? Johan wondered. He briefly regretted not spending more time in Blackthorn City to use Lance's training facilities. And with Steven away on one of his mineral hunting expeditions, Johan couldn't rely on his old friend's world-class training grounds either. With the Academy and private facilities off-limits, wild areas seemed like the only option. That evening, after finishing an online counseling session, Johan sat with his Pokémon to watch a movie. This had become a household tradition, gathering in the living room to watch a spooky horror film. Johan leaned against Dragonite's soft belly, Ninetales' fluffy tails draped over him like a blanket. The scene was cozy and peaceful. Despite being ghost types, Jengar and Rotom hid under a blanket, trembling at every jump scare. "You're supposed to be ghosts," Johan muttered, rolling his eyes. Halfway through the movie, Johan's phone buzzed unexpectedly, causing Jengar and Rotom to shriek and faint dramatically. Stepping out to the balcony, Johan answered the call. It was Cynthia. "Do you have time in the coming weeks?" Cynthia's voice sounded fatigued. "What's up?" Johan asked, noting the exhaustion in her tone. "Ugh." Cynthia sighed. "The Sinnoh League asked my grandmother to assist with some investigations. She passed part of the task to me, and while going through the archives, I found something that made me think of you. I could really use your help." "What kind of help?" Johan inquired. "Ruins, ancient texts, and some research on ancient Pokémon," Cynthia explained. Ancient Pokémon? Johan's mind immediately thought of fossil Pokémon like Sherelden and Cranidos, common in Sinnoh. This might be worth exploring, especially with his expertise in calming ancient Pokémon. Heading to Sinnoh, Johan murmured. He glanced at his Pokémon, who were suspiciously eavesdropping from behind the door. Opening the sliding door, Johan saw Jengar, Tinkaton, Dragonite, Ninetales, and even Cupful lined up perfectly, pretending to act casual as they scattered in all directions. Returning to his call, Johan replied, "All right, I'll help. Where do you want me to leave?" "I'll book your ticket," Cynthia offered. "Sounds good," Johan agreed, before casually adding, "By the way, is your training ground available?" "A what?" Cynthia replied, sounding slightly confused. "Wednesday, cloudy with occasional rain. Sinnoh region, Jubilife City." As the largest city in the Sinnoh region, Jubilife City boasted a high degree of modernization, with skyscrapers lining its streets. It was said that Jubilife City was built by settlers from Oreburgh City on the slopes of a mountain they had mined. Thanks to its extensive transportation network, the city had become a hub for businesses and corporations, showcasing advanced technology. Landmarks such as Jubilife TV, Pokémon Company, and the trainer school stood out as key features of the city. When Johan walked out of the airport, he was immediately greeted by a crowd of people. But don't get the wrong idea, they weren't there for him. The commotion was caused by someone waiting to meet him. Cynthia, clad in her signature black trench coat, her golden hair cascading like silk, she was impossible to miss amidst the throng of onlookers. When Cynthia spotted Johan emerging from the airport, her bright eyes lit up slightly. "You're here," she said in her usual calm and soft tone. "Yeah," Johan replied. Noticing the attention from those around them, the two kept their conversation brief and quickly disappeared into the crowd. "Who was that?" Cynthia herself came to pick them up. "That looked like Johan." "Johan? You mean the champion of the Indigo Plateau Conference? The guy who cleared the battle frontier in 3.5 days?" "No way. Isn't he the one with that terrifying team of Jengars?" Once they left the airport, the attention on them quickly dissipated. Johan, familiar with Sinnoh from past visits, wasted no time and asked, "Where to next?" "Oreburgh City," Cynthia answered directly. Oreburgh City was known for its abundance of natural resources and its status as an industrial hub centered around coal, mining, and minerals. The city had close ties with Devon Corporation, which sourced rare minerals and ores from Oreburgh. It was also home to facilities for reviving fossils into ancient Pokémon, as many rare fossils were unearthed in the mines. "So, it's about ancient Pokémon after all," Johan thought to himself. That should make this a relatively straightforward task. They arrived at a parking lot. "Get in," Cynthia said, gesturing toward a sleek black SUV that exuded an air of power. "We're driving." Johan was surprised. Oreburgh City was located just east of Jubilife, but driving didn't seem like Cynthia's style. Wasn't she the type to ride her Garchomp and shoot straight into the sky? Cynthia blinked, her silver eyes narrowing slightly in thought. "Aren't you afraid of heights?" Johan straightened his face. "Who said I was afraid of heights? I just, prefer to take things slow, and don't like things to go too fast." Cynthia tilted her head, her expression filled with curiosity. "What are you even talking about?" "Never mind," Johan muttered, realizing how his words might be misinterpreted. "Well, if you're not afraid of heights." Cynthia promptly summoned her Garchomp. "Gar!" The ferocious dragon emerged, its sharp fins gleaming as its predatory eyes locked onto Johan with a cold, unkind gaze. Whether intentionally or not, the creature tilted its head just enough for the razor edge of its fin to catch the light, the reflection landing squarely on Johan's face. Sweat formed on his brow as he forced a smile. "Long time no see, Garchomp." Garchomp exhaled twin streams of white mist from its nostrils, snorting derisively. "Oof, you're the punk who kept making Pokémon dance during battles, huh? If Cynthia weren't here, I'd take you on myself. No teammates, just one-on-one." As the friendly exchange unfolded, Cynthia smiled faintly. She reached for another Pokeball to summon a second flying Pokémon, but Johan stopped her. "No need for that. If we're flying..." Click! The ball at Johan's waist popped open. Dry, towering and sturdy, the recently evolved Dragonite appeared by Johan's side, its orange scales gleaming and its goofy grin making it seem approachable. Cynthia raised an eyebrow, genuinely impressed. Your Dragonair evolved. Even Garchomp's expression shifted slightly, growing more serious. It could sense the latent power emanating from Dragonite. This guy really has been improving fast, Garchomp thought. Maybe soon enough, we can have a proper battle. Johan patted Dragonite's soft, squishy belly and said with a grin, "Yeah, it evolved not too long ago." "You've trained it exceptionally well," Cynthia commented with a nod. She mounted Garchomp with practiced ease. "Keep up if you can." Garchomp shot Johan a challenging smirk before blasting into the sky, leaving behind a pair of white contrails. Dragonite flapped its wings eagerly, gesturing for Johan to hop on quickly. Johan sighed. Why had he asked about flying in the first place? Driving would have been fine. Reluctantly, he climbed on a Dragonite's back, muttering, "Dragonite, let's not rush this. Take it slow." Whoosh! Dragonite's powerful wings launched them skyward with exhilarating speed. After they left, a small shadow emerged from a corner, panting heavily. It was Marshadal. Clutching its chest, it glanced up at the sky, where two trails of vapor marked the path of the Pokémon. "They're flying again. Do you know how hard it is to keep up with you just for a bite to eat?" "No, I mean to monitor the holder of the rainbow wing." As they soared through the air, Johan clung tightly to Dragonite's neck. Compared to Dragonair, Dragonite's back was more stable, offering firm footing and something to hold on to. However, its increased speed more than made up for that stability. "Looks like it's about to rain," Cynthia called out over the rushing wind. "We should hurry." Johan grumbled, "Sure," in a muffled voice, his eyes squeezed shut. "You're really not afraid of heights?" Cynthia teased. "Of course not." "Then why won't you open your eyes?" she asked, her silver eyes glinting mischievously. "It's windy, that's all." Boom! Thunder rumbled ominously above as dark clouds gathered in the sky. Johan's heart skipped a beat. Given Dragonite's notorious luck. Crash! A bolt of golden lightning suddenly pierced the sky, illuminating everything in its dazzling glow. Garchomp abruptly halted, looking toward the stormy clouds above. This lightning's timing seemed off. "Johan," Cynthia called out, watching in confusion as Dragonite momentarily dipped from view. Thankfully, it quickly rose back up, flapping its wings vigorously. Dragonite let out a breath of relief, wiping imaginary sweat from its brow. Johan, meanwhile, clutched at his chest, drenched in cold sweat. The Zapdos feather in his possession glowed faintly, having absorbed the stray bolt of electricity. Electricity levels, 5,000%. Rotom. Elelo Toto. Rotom stammered, its eyes glowing faintly from the sudden surge of power. They eventually arrived at Oreburgh City, nestled beside a massive mountain rich in coal and minerals. The city's industrial facilities were bustling, with workers and Pokémon, such as Machoke, Timber, and Conkeldurr, assisting with the heavy labor. Cynthia led Johan into the Oreburgh mines and straight to a large central building filled with mining equipment and workstations. Inside, a massive table held various stones and fossils, along with a number of ancient, cracked stone tablets inscribed with strange markings. "Cynthia, you're here," greeted Rourke, the Oreburgh gym leader and overseer of the mines. Cynthia introduced Johan to Rourke, who smiled warmly. "Johan, I've heard plenty about you. It's great to finally meet in person." The three of them gathered around the table. Johan examined the stone tablets casually at first, but something quickly caught his eye, a pattern of 6 circular dots arranged in a hexagon. "This, you've noticed," Cynthia said. "Registeel," Johan murmured, recognizing the iconic pattern of the legendary Titans. Cynthia nodded. "There are more over here." She pointed to other stone fragments, which bore the markings of Regirock and Regice. "Wait a minute." Johan's heart sank. "She called me here to deal with these ancient Pokémon? It's not Shirelden or Cranidos. It's the legendary Titans?" Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed through the mine. "What's that?" Johan asked. A revived Aerodactyl, Rourke explained. It woke up when we unearthed these fossils and has been restless ever since. Oh, thank Arceus. Johan breathed a sigh of relief. A raging Aerodactyl is manageable. Let's just hope this stays a minor quest, reviving Aerodactyl's fury, and doesn't escalate into the massive quest of awakening Regigigas. In the Oreburgh mines, the Aerodactyl flew restlessly through the not-so-spacious cavern, but it showed no intention of leaving the mine. In ancient times, this had been its domain. As the ruler of its territory, it was unwilling to leave the mine. That was precisely the tricky part. If a large-scale battle occurred, it could cause irreparable damage to the Oreburgh mine. A collapse would disrupt the mine's operations and have significant consequences for the entire Oreburgh city. Yet the Aerodactyl couldn't simply be left unchecked. Its presence was halting all work in the mine, and it made further exploration into the cavern containing the stone tablets impossible. Cynthia could easily subdue the Aerodactyl if needed. The real issue, however, was what came afterward. Let's freeze it for now, Johan suggested. Cynthia's golden eyes lit up as she nodded. Good idea. 9-tails. Johan tossed out a pokeball, and his snow-white Alolan 9-tails appeared before him, summoning an icy flurry as its mane flowed elegantly. Glacian. Cynthia followed suit, releasing her own Glacian, its light blue fur shimmering like frosted glass. Glacian, the fresh snow Pokémon. An ice-type evolution of EV Rotom. Glacian greeted 9-tails warmly, its tone brimming with familiarity. 9-tails blinked in recognition and then smiled gently. Glay, // Q. Seeing this, Glacian's cheeks flushed a faint pink. The two Pokémon together were a harmonious sight, like elegant sprites dancing in a wintry wonderland. So, it evolved, Johan said with a small smile. Cynthia nodded. Yes, I finally decided to evolve it into Glacian. Your 9-tails influenced that choice. As the snowstorm thickened, Glacian's figure seemed to merge into the swirling frost, becoming nearly indistinguishable from the wintry landscape. Its snow-cloak ability was a perfect match for 9-tails. However, unlike the serene reunion between 9-tails and Glacian, the Aerodactyl grew increasingly agitated at the onset of the storm. Its crimson eyes blazed with fury as it let out a deafening roar. Gar! Ooh! 9-tails immediately adopted a serious expression. This Aerodactyl was strong, too strong to be underestimated. One after another, layers of Aurora Veil shimmered into existence, and a thin layer of frost climbed up 9-tails' fur, amplifying its defensive stance. Glay! Meanwhile, Glacian seemed irritated. It had only just reunited with 9-tails, and now this prehistoric brute was ruining the moment. 9-tails Blizzard. Glacian U2 Blizzard. Double Blizzard. In an instant, the cavern was engulfed in a raging snowstorm. The temperature plummeted sharply as biting winds and icy flurries swept over Aerodactyl. The Aerodactyl tried to escape, but it found itself trapped. Wherever it flew, it was blocked by shimmering barriers. No matter how it struggled, every path led to a dead end. Even if it managed to break free of the Aurora Veil, the cavern walls were now coated with thick frost, making them nearly impossible to break through. The Aerodactyl, battered by the relentless blizzard, finally slowed its movements. Moments later, it froze solid, crashing to the ground with a loud thud as an icy sculpture. The workers, who had been observing cautiously from a distance, gasped in awe. This Aerodactyl had been a fearsome menace. Even Rourke, the Oreburgh gym leader, had struggled to contain it. And now, it had been subdued so easily, with almost no resistance. 9-tails, use hypnosis, Johan instructed calmly. As the Aerodactyl's frozen form trembled slightly, 9-tails locked eyes with it, casting a soothing hypnosis that lulled it into a deep slumber. The frost encasing its body slowly melted away, leaving the Aerodactyl asleep but unharmed. Johan turned to Rourke and said, That should do it. But it'll need time to adapt. Rourke nodded. Leave it to us. Oreburgh City has an artificial habitat tailored for ancient Pokémon. Oreburgh was home to many revived ancient Pokémon, including Shirelden, Cranidos, Omanite, and Kabuto. Johan trusted that the city's facilities could help the Aerodactyl adjust to its new environment. Odd though, Johan mused. Our Jengar's technically ancient too, but didn't need much time to adapt. Of course, his Jengar was now a smartphone gaming enthusiast. With the Aerodactyl subdued, the Oreburgh mine resumed operations. Machines roared to life, transporting coal to the city to power Oreburgh and nearby towns. Meanwhile, archaeologists resumed their work in the cavern where the stone tablets had been unearthed. This wasn't Johan's area of expertise, so he left the professionals to it. Instead, he took his Pokémon outside for a bit of exercise. Cynthia's Pokémon also joined in, and the two groups mingled comfortably. Ninetales and Glacian groomed each other's fur, their interactions as warm as the icy aura they shared. Tinkaton and Lucario sparred playfully, testing their moves against one another. Dragonite and Milotic stood face to face, tilting their heads in mutual curiosity, before both simultaneously let out confused hums. Meanwhile, Kubfu and Charcadet circled around Gastrodon, debating whether it could serve as a suitable mount. Of course, not all interactions were so harmonious. At one moment, Jengar and Garchomp, who had just been laughing together, were suddenly arguing over whether Meowth or Piku was cuter. Plastic sisters, Johan muttered with a chuckle before correcting himself. Wait, Jengar's male. Nearby, Spiritome rested quietly at Johan's side, looking uncharacteristically docile. See, you're the best-behaved one, Johan praised, patting Spiritome gently. PSSHHD // Q. The once terrifying amalgamation of 108 souls now looked like a shy little puppy. Johan smiled. The contrast made Spiritome all the more endearing. As evening approached, rain drizzled lightly, and the setting sun cast a dreamy glow over the city. Cynthia approached Johan, her weariness visible but her posture still graceful. Let's go, she said. To where? Back to Celestic Town, Cynthia explained. I've finished copying the inscriptions on the tablets. Some of the necessary reference materials are in my grandmother's research library. Johan nodded in understanding. Celestic Town, huh? Good. That probably meant he could use Cynthia's private training grounds. But then a thought struck him. We're not flying, are we? He asked nervously. Cynthia chuckled, her tired eyes softening as she smiled at him. Under the twilight, she looked even more beautiful. I called for a plane, she replied. Planes are good. Planes are great, Johan said quickly, relieved. High in the sky, Johan reviewed the stone tablet replicas Cynthia had brought on the plane. As he studied them, he absent-mindedly patted Ninetales, who was curled up beside him. Don't look at me like that, he muttered when he caught Cynthia watching him. I really don't know much about archaeology. Ignoring his protest, Cynthia picked up 3 of the clearer tablet copies and laid them out. These 3 should correspond to Regirock, Regice, and Registeel, she explained. She went on to recount her own encounters with the legendary Titans and referenced the time Johan had faced Brandon's Regis at the battle frontier. That familiarity was why she had asked for his help. But these... She pointed to fragments of other tablets, their markings partially destroyed. Even so, Johan could see that the patterns were similar to those of the Regis. He carefully arranged the fragments, piecing them together into 2 new formations. Each design featured 7 dots in unique arrangements. This is... Cynthia's eyes widened in surprise. Regieleki and Regidrago, Johan murmured. Ooh, Johan explained. Regieleki, the Electric Titan, Regidrago, the Dragon Titan. Both were creations of Regigigas, like the original trio of Titans, but far less commonly seen. He also mentioned that Regidrago was incomplete, with only its head finished due to a shortage of materials. As an addition from the 8th generation of Pokémon lore, Johan hadn't expected to find evidence of these two in Sinnoh. As she listened to his explanation, Cynthia smiled faintly. Looks like I was right to ask for your help after all. Celestic town. Cynthia's home. You can stay in the same room as before. Nothing's really been moved. Cynthia sat curled up on the couch, her arms hugging her knees, her snow-white feet peeking out and lightly swaying like small fish in clear water. Got it. It was convenient, after all. Johan was already familiar with the place, since this was his second visit. After putting his luggage in the room, he stepped out and found Cynthia looking at him with a pitiful expression, her large gray eyes almost irresistible. But thinking of Garchomp's sharp, sideways glare and Lucario's watchful aura, Johan gritted his teeth and coldly declared, "I'll charge extra for that." "Okay," Cynthia obediently replied, her voice sweet. "Oomph." Scoffing, Johan grabbed an apron from the wall, tied it around himself, and asked, "What do you want to eat?" Cynthia tilted her head, blinking as though deep in thought, her hesitation and indecision written all over her face. Johan sighed. He really shouldn't have asked. Getting someone with choice paralysis to pick a meal? By the time she made up her mind, they'd probably need to think about tomorrow's breakfast instead. Noodles. Quick, simple, and practical. Besides, given how rarely Cynthia stayed at home, there probably weren't many ingredients in the kitchen anyway. Just then, Johan's phone buzzed twice. Beep, beep. A notification popped up. 10,000 poke dollars received. He clicked his tongue in satisfaction. "Let's do noodles then," Cynthia said with a smile. Johan's mood instantly brightened. Grinning, he said, "Right away, dear guest." Humming a tune, he grabbed Rotom and headed into the kitchen. Rotom tilted its screen-like face, perplexed. With pay secured, Johan's motivation soared. Meanwhile, in the living room, Lucario glanced at Charcadet, who had quietly walked up to it. "Lucie." Its tone carried curiosity. With a faint hum, Charcadet released a small wave of aura, signaling its intent. Lucario immediately understood. It had come seeking guidance. For a student with a humble and studious attitude, Lucario was always happy to oblige, just as it had once taught Tinkaton. Elsewhere, Jengar had dragged Garchomp off to the side. "Kaka." It glanced sneakily toward the kitchen, ensuring Johan and Rotom were preoccupied before whispering conspiratorially. "Big Sis Shark, what's the plan for tonight?" Hearing this, the other Pokémon in the room perked up their ears. It had been a while since they'd had any nighttime excursions. Back in Rustboro City, they'd practically exhausted all the local wild and stray Pokémon. Who didn't know the name of Sunglasses Jengar by now? Now that they were at the resource-rich MT Coronet, how could they pass up the opportunity to stir up some chaos? Garchomp huffed coldly, shooting Jengar a sidelong glare before curling its lip in a menacing grin. "You'll find out by midnight." Later, Johan emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 steaming bowls of udon noodles. The savory aroma wafted through the air, making Cynthia's nose twitch. She perked up and walked to the dining table, her tired demeanor replaced with eager anticipation. On a chilly winter night, especially one near MT Coronet, a simple bowl of assorted udon was perfect for banishing fatigue and warming the soul. Setting the bowls down, Johan barely had time to adjust his apron before Cynthia clasped her hands together and declared, "Time to eat." Johan shook his head with a wry smile. Noticing Jengar's hopeful gaze, he said, "The fridge is almost empty. These 2 bowls were the limit. If you want some, I'll give you my portion." "Kaka." Jengar scratched its head in confusion. "What about you?" "Me? I'll just snack on some Poke Blocks." Garchomp and Lucario. Johan casually retrieved a box of Poke Blocks and distributed them to all the Pokémon present, including Cynthia's team. Soon, the room was filled with the sound of contented munching as everyone dug into their meals. In the end, Jengar didn't touch Johan's noodles. It was too worried about him stealing its Poke Blocks in retaliation. Cynthia ate slowly, taking small, delicate bites. Yet somehow, her bowl emptied at a surprising pace. When she slurped up the last of the broth, her cheeks flushed slightly, and she let out a soft, satisfied burp. Realizing Johan was watching, she quickly averted her gaze, her blush deepening. To change the subject, she stammered, "I heard Rotom Pokemon are becoming more common recently." Johan blinked, probably because of the discovery of Rotom Island. He recalled how, back when he first played the Pokemon games, he'd assumed Rotom was some kind of mythical Pokemon, especially since Cyrus had schemed to capture one. Now, Johan glanced at his own Rotom, currently alternating between biting a battery and nibbling a Pokeblock. Roto. Sensing his gaze, Rotom paused mid-bite, sparks flickering from its body. "Nothing," Johan said. "Roto." Rotom nodded blankly before resuming its feast. "Apparently, they've even started making Rotom-powered appliances like berry blenders," Cynthia added. "Rotom berry blenders?" Johan raised an eyebrow. "They're supposed to improve the quality of berries. That sounds useful. How much is one?" Cynthia tilted her head. "I'm not sure. A few million poke dollars, maybe?" Johan froze. On second thought, his old, affordable berry blender was perfectly fine. It only cost around 100,000 poke dollars and worked just fine for making poke blocks his Pokemon loved. Later that night, after finishing their meal, Johan and Cynthia stayed up chatting for a bit before finally heading to bed, yawning as they went. For the Pokemon, however, the night was just beginning. The next morning, Cubfu stood before Mt. Coronet, bowing repeatedly with utmost sincerity. "Thank you, great nature, for your generous bounty. This humble bear offers its deepest gratitude." Johan. He didn't even need to guess. The wild Pokemon around Mt. Coronet were probably in for a harsh winter this year. Pouring himself a cup of coffee, Johan opened the window, letting in the crisp morning air. The cool breeze was invigorating, bringing with it the subtle scent of snow. On the refrigerator, he found a note from Cynthia. She had left early for the Celestic Town Historical Research Center, leaving Johan free to explore or train. She'd even mentioned a training area south of the house, equipped with plenty of facilities. "Perfect," Johan thought, smiling. "After breakfast, we'll train for a bit." Stepping outside, he relished the soft feel of grass underfoot and the warm touch of sunlight. Just as he was about to comment on the beauty of the morning, he froze. His gaze shifted to a nearby tree, where 3 people stood, staring at him in stunned silence. "That guy just came out of the boss lady's house." Flint stammered, his wild, fiery hair practically standing on end. Aaron's antenna-like strand of hair quivered as he seemed to have an epiphany. "It's Johan." Lucian, meanwhile, turned away, shielding half his face with his hand as he muttered, "I saw nothing. I saw nothing. I saw nothing." Johan blinked. Wait a second. These 3 were none other than 3 future members of Sinnoh's Elite Four. Flint, the Fire-type Master, Aaron, the Bug-type Specialist, and Lucian, the Psychic-type Ace. "What you guys doing here?" Johan asked. Aaron, eyes sparkling, exclaimed, "You're Johan." Lucian groaned. "Please don't lump me in with these 2. Flint's jaw dropped, his disbelief growing. "You even know what the boss lady did this morning?" Aaron, however, grew even more excited. "It's really Johan." "Johan." He glanced at Lucian, offering a silent look of sympathy. It must be exhausting hanging around these 2 all the time. Lucian's eyes met his, glistening with unshed tears. Finally, someone who understands. "Johan," Flint suddenly shouted, startling everyone. Even Jengar, who had been napping inside, fell from the ceiling with a loud thud. Rubbing its head, it floated out of the wall and glared at Flint. "Kaka." "What's with the yelling?" But Flint ignored it, pointing at Johan with burning determination. "Let's battle." Johan's face twitched. "No." Flint froze, clearly unprepared for such a swift rejection. Aaron gawked. "But battling is the best form of training." Johan exchanged a look with Jengar. "Kaka." He might have a point. Celestic Town, Cynthia's training field. Johan had to admit, Flint wasn't entirely wrong. After all, nothing accelerated growth like battles. In the games, battling a rival like Flint usually meant your Pokemon would level up at least 3 times after one round. In reality, battling tested tactics and moves in ways that traditional training simply couldn't replicate. Johan, be careful. Flint may be brash, but he's no pushover, Lucian cautioned, pushing up his glasses. Johan nodded. Of course, he knew this. In the Pokémon Adventures manga, Flint and Folker's teamwork was strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Giratina, even if only briefly. But this is just a practice match. There's no need to go all out, Johan said with a faint smile. Hearing this, Flint scratched his head in confusion. Is there really such a thing as not taking a battle seriously? For him, battling a strong opponent meant going all in every time. I'll referee, Lucian volunteered, adjusting his brown-tinted glasses as they glinted slightly in the light. He'd long wanted to see Johan's so-called master tactician skills in action. Watching his battles on TV wasn't the same as seeing them live. Now was the perfect opportunity to learn. Meanwhile, Aaron finally caught on to what was happening. He clapped his hands together and exclaimed, "Wait, Flint's battling Johan." This reaction speed, it made Johan wonder if Aaron's eventual Elite Four position would only come from Sinnoh running out of candidates. Lucian took charge, announcing, "Both sides call out your Pokémon." With a hearty laugh, Flint grabbed a Pokeball. "Johan, I've been waiting for this battle for a long time." He had watched Johan's record-breaking run through the battle frontier almost in its entirety. Although Flint missed Johan's final match against Brandon, he was inspired enough to try the Sinnoh battle frontier himself. With his Infernape leading the charge, Flint nearly matched Johan's pace at the battle tower, earning an impressive streak. But when he reached the battle factory, reality hit hard. Flint's aggressive style worked wonders with his own Pokémon, but fell apart when using unfamiliar rental teams. The harsh lessons at the battle factory only made Flint want to battle Johan even more. "This is our first battle, so I'm giving it everything I've got," Flint declared, his fiery spirit flaring. "Flint, how many times have you battled Cynthia?" Johan asked suddenly. Caught off guard, Flint scratched his head sheepishly. "About 108 times. 108 times. Johan's eyebrow twitched. "And how many of those did you win?" "None." Flint laughed loudly, though there was an awkward undertone. His track record could be described as either relentlessly persistent or persistently hopeless. "All right then," Johan said with a faint smile. "Let's battle." "Oh." Flint was confused. Lucian, however, tensed slightly. What just happened? With just two casual questions, Johan had extinguished the blazing fire that was Flint's trademark energy. Lucian adjusted his glasses, studying Johan with admiration. Is this the power of psychological tactics? He even dampened Flint's fighting spirit. Flint, oblivious to the mental chess being played, released his first Pokémon, Magmortar. The rotund, cannon-armed fire type emerged with a confident smirk, flexing its arm cannons as if to say, "Bring it on." Magmortar, the blast Pokémon. A pure fire type, its arm cannons can launch flames reaching up to 2,000 degrees Celsius. Rotom reporting. Johan tapped his monocle lightly before selecting his own Pokeball. He'd already considered Flint's potential lineup. As a fire-type specialist, Flint's Pokémon posed a significant challenge. Johan's team, on the other hand, lacked the water, rock, or ground types needed to counter fire types effectively. Still, this was just a practice match, and he wanted to gauge Flint's strength. "Let's go, Charcadet." Goka, the little fire type, appeared, its bird-like fiery crest flaring as it took an eager fighting stance. Flint's eyes lit up. "Your Charcadet, huh? I remember it from your Battle Frontier matches. Let's see how it handles the heat." Lucian adjusted his glasses again. Fire versus fire. Interesting choice. From the sidelines, Aaron was in awe. Whoa, Flint's Magmortar against Johan's Charcadet. This is going to be epic. Lucian silently sighed, thinking it's too early to call anything epic, Aaron. The battle began. Magmortar, show them our firepower. Use Flamethrower. Magmortar's arm cannon glowed ominously before releasing a searing jet of flames. Charcadet, Flamethrower 2, Johan ordered calmly. Goka. Charcadet stomped the ground, gathering fiery energy into its hands before unleashing a roaring stream of flames. The two flamethrowers collided, creating a swirling inferno that lit up the training field. Even Lucian had to release his Mr. Mime to shield himself with a light screen. The intense heat distorted the air, and Lucian murmured, "Is Johan also an emotion-driven battler? This level of firepower is unexpected." The flames clashed violently before Charcadet charged straight through the inferno. Will-o'-the-wisp pathway. Johan's tactical brilliance, shown as Charcadet, used the flame collision to mask its approach. "Come on, fire punch!" Flint roared. Magmortar's arm lit up, its fiery fist swinging down to meet the incoming Charcadet. Bam! Fist collided with fist, sending both Pokémon skidding back. Flint grinned. Magmortar, double flamethrower. Magmortar raised both arm cannons, unleashing twin streams of fire. Lucian raised an eyebrow. "That's unfairly efficient. It's like battling a 2-in-1 Pokémon." Charcadet endured the flames, its fiery crest flaring brighter as it closed the distance again. "Keep pressing, Charcadet. Will-o'-the-wisp." Goka. Charcadet summoned ghostly green flames that danced toward Magmortar, forcing it to break its rhythm. "Now incinerate." Charcadet's flames surged forward in a fiery cascade, catching Magmortar off guard. Flint clenched his fists. "Magmortar, use Stomp." Magmortar stomped the ground, causing a fiery shockwave to ripple outward. Johan smirked. "Charcadet, stand your ground." Charcadet weathered the impact, and a golden flame began to swirl around its body. "What kind of fire is that?" Aaron exclaimed. Lucian's expression darkened. "That's the flame of life," he muttered. "The what?" "A sacred fire said to be connected to Ho-Oh and Nti, with restorative properties. Charcadet must have been blessed by Nti or Ho-Oh to wield it." Johan's grin widened. "Charcadet, finish this infernal wave." Charcadet's entire body erupted in golden flames, the aura condensing into a spiraling wave of heat and light. The radiant blaze engulfed Magmortar entirely, leaving Flint speechless. When the flames subsided, Magmortar stood swaying before collapsing in defeat. Flint's wide-eyed shock quickly gave way to fiery excitement. "That was incredible." Lucian adjusted his glasses. "Johan has more than just tactics. He's turning fire types into an art form." Flint laughed loudly. "This battle isn't over yet. Let's go Infernape." Johan smirked, summoning his next Pokémon. "Well then, time for round 2. Flint was fired up. After recalling his Magmortar, he wasted no time throwing out his second Pokeball. "Time for our next round. Go to Typhlosion." Emerging on a battlefield was a large, bipedal Pokémon resembling a badger, its neck ringed with roaring flames that surged and flickered violently as it roared. Typhlosion, the volcano Pokémon, a pure fire type. When Typhlosion becomes furious, it burns everything it touches to ashes. Lodo. Typhlosion? When Johan saw Flint summon Typhlosion as his second Pokémon, he was a little surprised. He had expected Flint to send out his signature Pokémon, Infernape, considering how fired up he was. But after a moment's thought, it made sense. In the early history of Sinnoh, particularly during the Hisui period, Pokémon like Typhlosion were present in the region. Not to mention, Sinnoh and Johto shared a deep connection. Hundreds of years ago, some of Sinnoh's inhabitants migrated to ancient Johto, with the northernmost area of Johto still bearing the Sinjo ruins as proof of this shared history. The bond between the two regions ran deep. "Let's show Johan just how fierce our flames are," Flint said, his excitement evident. Typhlosion. Typhlosion roared once more, the flames on its back erupting skyward, filling the area with scorching heat. The Pokémon's fighting spirit was blazing, as was Flint's. Meanwhile, Johan withdrew Charcadet. Although Charcadet had survived the powerful final stomping tantrum from Magmortar, it had taken too much damage to continue fighting. Johan exhaled slowly, a calm smile forming on his face as his gaze sharpened. Even Johan had to admit that battling an emotional trainer like Flint made it easy to be swept up in their energy. When your opponent radiated such fiery intensity, it inevitably influenced you and your Pokémon as well. Well then, nothing to hold back now. Johan reached for the next Pokeball. Why does it feel like Johan is getting fired up too? Muttered Aaron. Lucian glanced at him, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. How did you feel when battling Flint? Aaron froze for a moment before realization dawned. Of course, when battling Flint, it was easy to find yourself drawn into his pace and emotions. Pokemon battles weren't just exchanges between Pokemon. They were a form of communication between trainers as well. Still, for a tactical trainer like Johan, falling into the rhythm of an emotional opponent could be a major disadvantage. How would Johan handle this? Go Dragonite, Johan said. From within a luxury ball, a streak of red light materialized into a Dragonite. Its entrance brought a fierce gust of wind that swept across the field. Flint stood with his hands in his pockets, the breeze ruffling his spiky afro, but the fiery passion in his eyes remained undimmed. His gaze locked onto the Dragonite, and he could feel the sheer power radiating from the pseudo-legendary Pokémon. So, it's Dragonite from the Kanto region. Flint grinned. Now we're really getting somewhere. Dragonite looked at Typhlosion and Flint with a cheerful grin. It playfully thumped its fists together, the sound reverberating like a deep drum. Duong, duong. It, too, was ready for battle. Typhlosion, flamethrower. Flint roared. Typhlosion. Typhlosion took a deep breath before expelling a stream of searing flames, surging forward like molten lava toward Dragonite. Opening with Flamethrower, that was classic Typhlosion. Flamethrower. The move's power varies based on the user's HP. At full health, it's a scorching 150 power, the most potent non-exclusive fire-type move. The blazing flames roared toward Dragonite, the sheer heat warping the air as they advanced. Dragonite Dragon Dance to evade. Johan ordered. Drop. With two small but powerful flaps of its wings, Dragonite took to the air with surprising speed. Its nimbleness was astonishing for its plump frame. The highest level of light-footedness is making even a large Pokémon move like the wind, Aaron commented, eyes wide. Follow it, Flint shouted. The flamethrower twisted and turned, tracking the zigzagging Dragonite, painting glowing arcs in the sky. Use Hydro Pump, Johan countered. With a quick aerial turn, Dragonite fired a high-pressure jet of water from its mouth. Hisses. The scorching flames collided with the water, producing a massive cloud of steam that quickly enveloped the battlefield. Stay sharp, Typhlosion, Flint warned. Swoosh. A sound like slicing wind. From within the steam, Dragonite emerged at breakneck speed, cloaked in blue-purple energy, diving directly at Typhlosion. Dragon Rush. It's like Cynthia's Garchomp, Aaron murmured, stunned. Flint and Typhlosion, however, didn't back down for a second. Dodging? That wasn't their style. Typhlosion, one more flamethrower. The molten firestorm erupted from Typhlosion's maw, surging forward once again. Boom! The fire and Dragonite's charge collided, but, astonishingly, Dragonite ripped through the flames. The fiery onslaught split apart like an unraveling thread as Dragonite barreled through it. Crash! Dragonite's full-body tackle struck Typhlosion, shaking the ground and sending a plume of dust and debris into the air. Did it just tear through Flamethrower? Aaron stammered, his antenna-like strand of hair curling into a question mark. Lucian, though startled, quickly pieced it together. Johan's Dragonite has the multi-scale ability, he explained. Multi-scale. When the Pokémon is at full HP, the first attack it takes deals half damage. This meant Typhlosion's Flamethrower, though devastating, was effectively reduced to half its usual strength, further mitigated by Dragonite's natural resistance to fire-type moves. But even so, the sheer ferocity of the clash left both Lucian and Aaron astonished. Typhlosion. As the dust settled, Typhlosion stood in the middle of the impact zone, roaring ferociously as the flames on its back surged to their peak. It had triggered its Blaze ability. Blaze. When a user's HP drops below a certain threshold, Fire-type moves gain a 1.5x damage multiplier. Oh! Flint roared. Typhlosion, overheat. Johan's eye twitched. He could admit he was curious about the raw destructive power Flint's Typhlosion could unleash with overheat in this state. Overheat, a fire-type move with massive base power but at the cost of drastically reducing the user's special attack. But he wasn't about to find out, not like this. Extreme speed, Johan commanded. Dragonite was surrounded by a white aura and shot forward like a streak of light, delivering a decisive strike. Wham! Typhlosion collapsed with a heavy thud, its flames flickering out as it fainted. Flint, Lucian, Aaron. For a moment, Flint looked like he'd swallowed a lump of charcoal. His lips moved, but no words came out. Eventually, it was Lucian who broke the silence with an awkward chuckle. Well, that was precise. Honestly, it wasn't just precision. It was almost unfair. Extreme speed had a higher priority than overheat, allowing Dragonite to interrupt the attack entirely. For Flint, it was the battle equivalent of gearing up to launch a massive fireball, only to get bopped in the face before the words "Fireball Jutsu" could leave his mouth. It was worse than never getting fired up at all. Dragonite flew back to Johan's side, looking sheepish as it rubbed the back of its head. Was that too much? Johan patted Dragonite on the arm, his smile sly. Don't worry. He's got something even stronger. Dragonite brightened, cracking its knuckles as its eyes gleamed with anticipation. Phew! Flint exhaled deeply as he recalled Typhlosion. When he looked up again, his eyes were brighter than ever, his fiery spirit fully reignited. That's what I'm talking about. Flint shouted. This is the battle I've been waiting for, Johan. He gripped his final Pokeball tightly and tossed it high into the air. Let's go, Infernape. With an acrobatic flip, a monkey-like Pokemon emerged. Its head was crowned with roaring flames, its body adorned with golden armor-like markings that gleamed in the sunlight. Infernape. Dragonite instinctively tensed, sensing the overwhelming power radiating from the blazing Pokemon before it. For most trainers, Flint's team was divided into two categories: Infernape and everything else. Flint's Infernape was a different beast entirely. Even in official battles, this Infernape had been known to take down two of Cynthia's Pokemon in succession before finally being bested by her Garchomp. With or without Infernape, Flint was essentially two different trainers. Infernape, power up Flame Punch. Flint roared, wasting no time. Infernap. The fire atop its head flared wildly as Infernape dashed forward, its fists igniting in blazing orange flames. Extreme speed, Dragonite surged forward, its form blurring as it closed the distance. Clang! Fist met fist with an echoing metallic clash that reverberated through the battlefield. Both Pokemon staggered backward. Dragonite shook its hand, exhaling steam. That punch was no joke. Infernape. Infernape grinned, fire dancing in its eyes as it acknowledged Dragonite as a worthy opponent. Feeling the heat, huh? Flint laughed, throwing his arms wide. Johan adjusted his glasses, his expression calm, but his voice brimming with excitement. Let's finish this properly, Dragonite. The ground cracked under Infernape's feet as it crouched low, its fire blazing higher than ever. Flare Blitz. Flint commanded. Not yet. Dragonite outrage. Johan countered. With a savage roar, Dragonite was enveloped in a crimson aura as it charged, its eyes glowing with a berserk gleam. The collision was explosive. Boom! When the smoke cleared, both Pokemon stood, battered and breathing heavily, but still standing. Johan quickly recalled Dragonite before its outrage-induced confusion could take hold. That's enough, he said softly, his tone filled with satisfaction. Flint's grin stretched even wider, his eyes blazing like his Infernape's flames. Now, that's more like it. Johan recalled Dragonite and threw out his third Pokeball. Go, Ninetales. Ooh! A graceful, snow-white fox leapt elegantly from its Pokeball, standing tall as it howled toward the sky. In an instant, a fierce snowstorm enveloped the battlefield. Alolan Ninetales. You're using Alolan Ninetales against Infernape? Lucian was puzzled by this choice. Flint and Aaron were outright baffled. Alola Ninetales was doubly weak to fire. And considering the current state of Flint's Infernape, though battered from its exchange with Dragonite, the intensity of its blaze-driven flames was fiercer than ever. Even the snowstorm brought by Alola Ninetales' snow warning ability was melting before it could even touch the scorching heat surrounding Infernape. With Infernape in this condition, Alola Ninetales might get one shot, Aaron muttered nervously. Of all of them, Aaron, as a bug-type specialist, was the most terrified of facing Flint in such a state. There was simply no solution in his arsenal that could withstand the overwhelming power of blaze-boosted flames. How are you supposed to stop that? He didn't know. Ooh. Alola Ninetales let out another cry, and shimmering aurora veils began falling one after another. Layer after layer of protective barriers blanketed the field. But neither Flint nor his Infernape seemed fazed by Ninetales' presence. So you've got Alola Ninetales? Perfect. Flint's eyes sparkled as he raised an arm and pointed dramatically. Infernape, flare blitz. Cool. Infernape opened its arms wide as flames roared up from its body. In the blink of an eye, it shot forward like a blazing meteor. Aurora Veil, break it. Crack, crack, crack. Under Infernape's relentless charge, the shimmering veils shattered one after another, each one bursting like fragile mirrors. And yet, Infernape's momentum didn't falter as it closed in on Alola Ninetales. Johan's expression remained calm, his voice steady as he gave the next command. Ninetales Blizzard. Ooh. A brilliant blue light swirled in Ninetales' eyes, and the snowstorm intensified into a raging blizzard. Empowered by ice energy and manipulated by psychic power, the ferocious winds began to pierce through Infernape's fiery aura. Strangely, Alola Ninetales didn't direct the blizzard at Infernape. Instead, the storm swirled tightly around itself, creating a whirling snow vortex centered on its body. The howling winds and biting cold made it seem almost impossible to approach. Even so, Infernape pressed forward, its blazing flames melting the snow and ice in its path. Now's your chance, Infernape! Flint roared. Boom! With a deafening burst of fire, Infernape's blazing fist slammed into Alola Ninetales. Crack! Crack, crack! Aurora veils shattered, one after another, until... thud! Infernape's fist stopped inches from Ninetales' body, striking an invisible barrier. What the... Everyone was stunned. Ice. Lucian was the first to notice it. There was a thick, transparent layer of ice surrounding Alola Ninetales, acting as a protective shield. Permafrost barrier. Within the barrier, Alola Ninetales' eyes gleamed mischievously, a sly grin playing across its fox-like face. Johan smirked. Training battles weren't just for winning. They were for refining techniques that needed honing. Dragonite had worked on its controlled outrage, and now it was Alola Ninetales' turn with Permafrost Barrier. No better way to test it than in a high-stakes match. Flint blinked in surprise, but his shock didn't last long. He roared, "It's just ice." Infernape, smash it! Cool. Infernape's flames surged again, its red-hot fist pressing against the ice as it pushed forward with full force. Crack! The surface of the barrier began to fracture, tiny spiderweb cracks spreading across its icy surface. Boom! With a resounding explosion, the ice shattered into countless fragments. Ooh! Alola Ninetales yelped as Infernape's punch finally landed, sending it skidding back across the snow-covered ground, leaving twin furrows in its wake. Even Johan had to admit, seeing Flint's Infernape in action was something else entirely. What kind of overpowered madness was this? This thing is insane, Johan muttered under his breath. He sighed. Battles against these protagonist-like trainers were always exhausting. Infernape, one more flare blitz. Flint bellowed, now fully in the zone. But even Johan had his limits. You're going for a third flare blitz? Johan muttered, slightly exasperated. Dragonite had already traded heavy blows with Infernape, and the fiery Pokémon had used Flare Blitz twice. While powerful, Flare Blitz dealt significant recoil damage to the user. The stronger the hit, the more damage it took in return. At this rate, how was Infernape still standing? Was Flint running on some kind of protagonist cheat code? If this weren't real life, Johan would have sworn Flint had a no-fainting clause written into his script. Well then, Johan muttered, adjusting his strategy. Ninetales, blizzard at full power. Well. The snowstorm around Ninetales intensified, fueled by icy energy and the howling winds of MT Cornet itself. Flint's Infernape surged forward once again, its blazing flames defying the encroaching cold. Fire clashed against ice. The two opposing forces tore through the battlefield, creating an awe-inspiring display of elemental power. And then, boom, 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 the fiery charge broke through, flames roaring like an unstoppable avalanche. But the blizzard was relentless, swirling tighter and tighter around Alolan Ninetales, amplifying its strength until it became an impenetrable vortex. Boom! The clash of ice and fire culminated in a massive explosion, shaking the ground beneath their feet. When the smoke cleared, an enormous ice sculpture stood at the center of the battlefield. Inside, Infernape was frozen in place, its flames extinguished, its eyes wide with unyielding determination. And yet, the ice began to crack. No way, Aaron whispered. Lucian adjusted his glasses, his voice calm yet tense. It's still moving. But Alolan Ninetales wasn't done. A brilliant blue beam shot from Ninetales' mouth, sealing the cracks and reinforcing the ice around Infernape. The faint flickers of flame on Infernape's body were completely snuffed out. Flint stood frozen in place. It's over, Aaron said, breaking the silence. No, it's not over, Flint suddenly shouted. Infernape, break free. The ice sculpture trembled. Lucian's mouth twitched. You're kidding me. But before anyone could react, Ninetales fired another ice beam at the frozen Infernape, fortifying the barrier even further. Flint opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Ninetales looked back at Johan and tilted its head as if asking, should I keep going? Johan sighed. That's enough, Ninetales. The fox hesitated, its gaze shifting to the massive ice block it had created. Are you sure? I could add another layer, just in case. No need. Trust me, it's done. Reluctantly, Ninetales stepped back, letting out a small whine of protest. Flint, meanwhile, stood motionless, his once blazing spirit thoroughly frozen. Well, that's finally over, Aaron muttered with a sigh of relief. Lucian adjusted his glasses and gave Johan a complicated look. As expected of Johan, the ultimate temperature control specialist. Whether it was a flickering ember of passion or a blazing inferno, he could extinguish it all with unnerving precision. This final match between Johan and Flint ended decisively in Johan's favor. Even so, Johan couldn't help but look back at the frozen Infernape with a faint smile. For a single Pokémon to push both Dragonite and Ninetales to their limits. Flint's Infernape was truly a monster. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out. What's going on here? Johan turned to see Cynthia, freshly returned from her research at the lab. Her gaze swept across the utterly destroyed battlefield, lingering on a massive block of ice containing Flint's Infernape. Johan cleared his throat awkwardly and took a step back. Flint did it. Flint looked completely dumbfounded. Ha, that was a good joke. Johan chuckled dryly. Lana might seem quiet and reserved, but she had a playful side. She loved making exaggerated jokes, like how she once caught Kyogre, a Super Gyarados, or even Lugia while fishing. She also claimed that the masked royals' opponents included Dialga, Palkia, and Darkrai. Most people, after a brief moment of confusion, could tell she was joking. But some, like her younger sisters and Ash, always took her seriously. Johan was only laughing dryly because, even though he knew it was a joke, she could actually do it. Lana was in Pastoria for the fishing tournament, accompanied by her father. Her father was a fisherman. His gear and technique were top tier, but his luck was abysmal. He could barely catch anything. Lana's father wasn't a concern, but Lana herself was absolutely one of the tournament's top contenders. Seeing that Johan understood her joke, Lana smiled shyly and looked down. After chatting a bit more, Lana and Mallow learned that Johan was also participating in the tournament. But when they found out he didn't have a fishing rod or bait prepared, Lana, as a way to thank him for helping Poplio, immediately offered to lend him some gear. After finishing their poke puffs, the three of them headed to the Central Hotel in Pastoria City. Lana showed Johan the fishing gear she had brought. This one should do. Lana pursed her lips and carefully selected what she considered to be her best and most perfect fishing rod. It was a collapsible rod with a light blue handle. With a press of a button, the rod extended. Once the line, reel, float, hook, and bait were attached, it was fully assembled. A very convenient, portable setup. "Are you sure?" Johan asked. It looked like her favorite rod. But Lana just smiled shyly. A true angler can catch Kyogre even with the simplest rod. Johan. She then took out a matching float, reel, and hook from her tackle box. Wait. Johan's eyes widened when he saw the misty-shaped fishing hook. Could this setup be the exact one she used to catch Kyogre? Hiss. Johan felt like he was witnessing a golden legend, a top-tier fishing setup. What's wrong? Lana asked. Ahem. Johan cleared his throat. That's Misty. Lana blushed slightly and muttered, I'm a fan of hers. When fishing, just attach the bait here, she explained softly, demonstrating the process. This is a special bait I made, designed specifically for Sinnoh's waters and fish. At that moment, Johan realized, with his top-tier gear, top-tier bait, and his own fishing skills, this tournament, he might actually win. Thanks in advance. Johan smiled. Forget about the rod Annabelle's colleague was going to lend him. A true angler needed top-tier equipment. The next day, the weather was perfect. The sea was calm, with gentle waves shimmering under the sunlight. Windgull glided across the sky, while Polyper dove in and out of the water, splashing in white arcs. Cynthia stood at the pier, her hair swaying in the breeze. She tucked a few strands behind her ear and smiled confidently. Pastoria's fishing tournament was about to begin, and Cynthia had brought out her prized fishing gear. Watching this picturesque scene, Johan couldn't help but feel a little more cheerful. The tournament had attracted many participants. Some, like Johan, had decided to join days ago. Others, like Lana, had traveled from different regions. Some had even planned for months in advance. The prizes were also generous. First place would receive a top-tier fishing rod co-developed by Devon Corporation and Canalave City, valued at several million poke dollars. Second and third place would get a shell bell and a water stone, respectively. Even those who didn't place in the top three would receive a high-quality citrus berry set as a consolation prize. With rewards this appealing, it was no wonder the tournament had so many competitors. However, with so many people gathered, there were also hidden dangers. As the highest-ranking officer present after Annabelle, Johan had already spotted a few international police colleagues discreetly signaling him from the crowd. Among them was Handsome, dressed in full fishing gear and looking ready for action. Have you gathered all the intel? Johan asked. Cynthia smiled warmly. Lucian is handling it. Nearby, Lucian had set up a sunshade, a chair, and a table. Dressed in a suit, he sat with his legs crossed, reading a book. A massive pile of books surrounded him. It looked like he had a lot of research to do. Johan shook his head slightly. Ultimate Research Assistant Lucian activated. Next to him, Flint slumped in her chair, covered in bruises. Apparently, yesterday, she had unknowingly wandered into an angler's sacred fishing spot. Her loud battle challenges and blazing flames had scared away all the fish. This was basically a declaration of war. She had barely escaped with her life after nearly being beaten into repentance by every angler there. So today, she was completely drained. Aren't insects usually used as bait? Aaron, who had spent all day finding a fishing rod, looked at Johan and Cynthia's bait. Then he looked at his own container full of bugs. He scratched his head. Yesterday, he and his Pokémon had spent hours in the forest collecting these. Normal insects aren't very effective in these conditions, Johan explained. Everyone was using bait made from berries mixed with special ingredients to enhance aroma and dispersal. Oh, Aaron nodded. Then he glanced at his Dustox with a thoughtful expression. Dustox, Sigma, LLL. Kaka. Jengar, wearing sunglasses, leaned against Garchomp, whispering in its ear. The moment we hook a big one, we rush in and pin it down. Garchomp gave Jengar a side glance. Do you think too highly of them? No offense, but Johan and Cynthia look impressive, but they won't catch anything big. Jengar grinned. Kaka. Silly shark, that's where you're wrong. If there's no big catch, we'll make one ourselves. Garchomp suddenly understood. The two Pokemon exchanged knowing smiles. The tournament officially began. Many participants immediately set sail. The tournament offered boat rentals with different sizes and models available. The Plus Edition fishing boats were said to have a big catch boost. Faster, sleeker, and, most importantly, more expensive. Johan had to admire the tournament's marketing strategy. Slap a plus on it, and suddenly they could charge way more. And people still rushed to rent them. These boats allowed anglers to reach prime fishing spots faster, including areas with stronger waves. And as every seasoned angler knew, bigger waves, bigger fish. Some contestants, however, chose to ride their Pokemon instead. But that had a downside. The movement from surfing could scare off rare water types. Lana and Mallow were riding a Lapras. Others rode Walrein, Swampert, Tentacruel, or even Mantine. Johan even saw one guy surfing on Snorlax. That thing's making waves like a tsunami. But the most ridiculous sight was someone surfing on a Squirtle. Johan could tell that Squirtle was seconds away from drowning. Handsome also noticed and silently glanced at his Krogunk. Krogunk. Johan, Cynthia, and Aaron rented a medium-sized boat and leisurely set off. Kaka. Jengar paddled gently, guiding them toward a prime fishing spot. At the judge's signal, countless fishing lines were cast into the water. Some people quickly reeled in water-type Pokemon. The tournament had a point system. Magikarp was worth 1 point. More uncommon Pokemon, like Lovedisc, Finneon, and Chinchou, had higher values. The highest-scoring Pokemon was Milotic. Johan considered, should I catch a water-type today? Then, he felt a tug on his line. Excited, he reeled it in. An orange Magikarp flopped onto the boat. Johan, Cynthia, pulls up another Magikarp. The two exchanged glances. Well, at least neither of them was empty-handed. Meanwhile, beneath the sea, as the fishing tournament heated up, a submarine moved silently through the depths. Friday, clear skies. Johan Sensei, it's me, Annabelle. A familiar voice came through the phone. Annabelle, what's up? Johan was a bit surprised by the sudden call. Johan Sensei, are you in Sinnoh right now? Instead of answering, Annabelle asked a question. Johan frowned slightly. What's she getting at? Although he hadn't deliberately kept his whereabouts a secret, not many people knew he was in Sinnoh. It was clear that some effort had been made to track him down. So he replied, you could say that. Annabelle, what do you mean you could say that? Here's the thing. Annabelle decided to cut to the chase. We've discovered a group of Pokemon hunters in Sinnoh and are planning to capture them. If you're in Sinnoh, we'd appreciate your help. Pokemon hunters? Johan immediately caught the key point. With Cynthia and the others currently investigating the history of the ancient titans, wasn't this setting up perfectly for a Regigiga's awakening scenario? Where? Johan asked, his tone more serious. If it were anything else, he might not be too concerned. But when it came to Pokemon hunters, he needed to know the details. If our intel is correct, they'll be sailing through Pastoria City. We're planning to set a trap there and catch them as they pass through, Annabelle said gravely. Pastoria City? Johan thought for a moment and quickly understood why. Pastoria City was located on Sinnoh's westernmost edge. The entire city was practically built into the ocean, made up of interconnected islands and bridges. It was a crucial hub for sea transport between Sinnoh, Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn. So, they're trying to smuggle Pokemon out of Sinnoh? Exactly, Annabelle confirmed. Compared to land routes with multiple checkpoints, the sea allows them to avoid unnecessary trouble. However, the sea was also full of dangers. Some uncharted waters harbored ferocious and powerful wild Pokemon. Certain sea areas had extreme natural conditions that could easily shatter an ordinary vessel. Aside from officially recognized and secured routes, the ocean remained a perilous place. But then there were people like Drake, who constantly sought to challenge and conquer the sea's dangers. Hearing Annabel's confirmation, Johan's expression turned serious. After all, his Vulpix had once been smuggled across the ocean to Hoenn. Annabel added, also, with the fishing tournament being held in Pastoria City these days, the crowd and number of boats will make it the perfect cover for them. Fishing tournament? For some reason, Johan immediately pictured Phoeba getting reeled in. As a seaside city and a major port, fishing was a popular activity in Pastoria. Got it. If the conditions allow, I'll head over, Johan said. After all, Cynthia had technically hired him, so he couldn't just leave without permission. All right. With that, Annabel hung up. Pastoria City, huh? Johan put his phone away. Pokémon hunters operating in Pastoria and using the waterways. This had all the makings of a disaster for them. Kaka. In the courtyard, Jengar suddenly shivered and let out a cry. Upon seeing the figure lurking in the shadows, it patted its chest and let out a deep sigh of relief. Kaka, you scared the ghost out of me. Marcia. Marshado's expression was pale, looking utterly miserable. If Jengar weren't hogging Johan's shadow, it wouldn't have had to constantly traverse the Shadow Realm just to keep up with its chosen one. It had chased Johan from Johto to Hoenn, then from Hoenn to Sinnoh, from Jubilife City to Canalave City, and now from Canalave to Celestic Town. Was that easy? What's wrong, Jengar? Johan stepped outside after finishing his call. Marshadao. Upon spotting Marshadao, Johan blinked in surprise. What are you doing in Sinnoh? He hadn't expected Marshadao to follow him all the way here. Marcia! Seeing Johan, Marshadao straightened its posture. It looked just as exhausted as Jengar usually did. Johan chuckled. I thought you'd stay in Hoenn. I even asked Galactic to make sure you got fed. Marcia, PQ. Marshadao was devastated. You could have told me earlier. Johan pulled out some poke blocks. Here, eat something to regain your energy. Marcia. Marshadao turned its head away. Oof. I don't need your food. Johan just laughed. Well, we might be leaving Celestic Town soon. Marcia. D. Johan placed the poke blocks on the grass and walked back inside with Jengar. Marcia. Marshadao pouted. Its eyes kept drifting toward the poke blocks, the enticing aroma tickling its hungry stomach. Marcia. Fine, just a little. Only so I have the strength to keep watching my chosen one. Yeah, that's it. You're going to Pastoria too? When Johan told Cynthia he might be heading to Pastoria, she mentioned she was going as well. Cynthia lazily yawned. There are some ancient texts in the Pastoria library. They don't have digital versions. The Pastoria library was Sinnoh's largest. Not just Sinnoh, even in the entire Pokémon world, it ranked among the top 3. Its collection was vast, covering a wide range of subjects. There were also many old books detailing Sinnoh's legends. For Johan, this was great news. With Cynthia, Lucian, Flint, and Aaron on board, if those Pokémon hunters dared to show up, they'd be instantly wiped out. Give it a little more time, and even Team Galactic would be instantly wiped out if they showed up. I heard. Aaron lifted his head from the sofa. Pastoria City is holding a fishing tournament. He was considering catching a water-type bug Pokémon. At least that way, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage when battling Flint. Fishing. Cynthia's eyes lit up. She did enjoy fishing. She had caught her Milotic alongside Garchomp while fishing. Seeing Cynthia's excitement, Johan had a thought. Is Cynthia also a hardcore angler? What is that Pokémon? Suddenly, a startled shout came from the courtyard. Johan's heart skipped a beat. He quickly stepped outside and saw Marshadao had its head stuck inside a box. It struggled for a moment before finally freeing itself, its face full of shock and fear, its mouth covered in Pokeblock crumbs. Could this be the mythical Pokémon Marshadao? Lucian, after a brief moment of surprise, spoke in astonishment. He had read about the Rainbow Hero legend in a book, which mentioned Marshadao as the Shadow Guide. Mythical Pokémon, Flint murmured. At that moment, Marshadao finally reacted. It opened its mouth as if to explain itself, but unable to find the words, it spun around and bolted toward the shadows. Just before disappearing, it glared at Flint. Marcia! Asterisk. Then, it vanished into the darkness. It ran away. Flint said, disappointed. Marcia Dow, the shadow guide, can enter the shadow realm at will, Lucian explained. Cynthia muttered, it's actually pretty cute. See cute? Johan glanced at Flint with sympathy. Good luck, Flint. Marcia Dow has marked you. Best case, you get beaten up. Worst case, you're turned to ashes. As Lucian explained Marcia Dow's lore to Flint and Aaron, Cynthia tugged on Johan's sleeve. Your Pokémon? She asked in a low voice. She had noticed the Poplio box on the ground and the crumbs on Marcia Dow's face. Clearly, they were Johan's. Johan shook his head. Just an acquaintance. With that, the group began preparing to leave for Pistoria. As Johan passed Flint, he hesitated for a moment before patting her on the shoulder. Flint, if there's anything you want to eat, just go ahead and eat a lot of it. Flint. Cynthia and Lucian went to the Pistoria library to research. Johan and Flint, who were somewhat interested in the upcoming fishing tournament, had to prepare things like fishing rods, bait, and other essentials. Of course, Johan hadn't forgotten that he also had an important task, dealing with the Pokémon hunters. As for Flint, being a fire-type specialist, she had little interest in fishing, and going to the library to read was even less appealing to her. So after arriving in the city center, she wandered off, probably looking for a battle with another trainer. Pistoria City's Central Cafe. This cafe was quite famous throughout Sinnoh, especially for its renowned poke puffs. In a corner of the cafe, Johan sat across from Annabelle, who was dressed in a sharp black suit. Annabelle handed Johan some documents related to their target. The leader of this operation is a Pokémon hunter known as Gyarados, a wanted criminal by the League, and our primary target for this mission. She slid over a photo. It showed a middle-aged man with a fierce expression, a dark complexion, and a cross-shaped scar on his face. They picked their timing well. With the fishing tournament allowing boats to head out to sea, they'll likely blend in with the participants. She paused before continuing. So, I plan to have some of my colleagues enter the tournament undercover. Johan coughed and finally spoke up. In that case, count me in. You're entering too? Annabelle looked surprised. Wait, are you a fishing expert? Expert? Well, not exactly. Johan tilted his head slightly. At most, I'm just a passing fisherman. Regardless, fishermen never go home empty-handed. I see. Annabelle nodded. With Johan participating, those Pokémon hunters wouldn't be escaping through the tournament. That said, I'll need a favor from your department for the tournament. Johan added. Annabelle became more serious. Go ahead. If it's within reason, we'll provide full support. As long as he wasn't asking for 100 officers, it was fine. The international police were always short on manpower. Can you lend me a fishing rod? Annabelle? Question mark. Preferably with some pre-mixed bait, Johan added. Wait, you're a fisherman without a rod? I understand. Handsome probably brought extra. I'll borrow one for you. Even Handsome was here. It seemed the international police were taking this mission very seriously. After a bit more discussion, Annabelle left to handle other matters. Johan, on the other hand, stayed to enjoy the cafe's famous poke puffs with his Pokémon. Ka-ka. Jengar rolled up its tongue and devoured the poke puff in one gulp. Ooh. Ninetales was also enjoying them one bite at a time. The taste is really good, Johan commented after trying one himself. We should bring some back for Galactic and the others. With Galad's cooking skills, it might even be able to replicate them. Just as they were eating, a commotion broke out outside. Poplio. Johan instinctively turned toward the window. A flustered Poplio was darting through the crowd, eyes filled with fear. It occasionally blew bubbles from its nose, encapsulating pedestrians and their Pokémon. Poplio, the sea lion Pokémon, a pure water type. It tirelessly practices creating large bubbles. Rotom Pokédex briefly lifted its head from a slice of cake and provided the description. This was one of Alola's starter Pokémon. Its final evolution, Primarina, was known for having one of the most beautiful singing voices in the Pokemon world. Kaka. Jengar scratched its head. That little guy seems really scared. Right then, the panicked Poplio dashed straight toward the cafe. Ninetales, Johan called softly, standing up and moving toward Poplio. Pop! The frightened Poplio suddenly noticed Johan, as well as his Ninetales and Jengar beside him. Its anxiety only increased, and it reflexively blew out another large bubble from its nose. Johan's vision flickered with Poplio's Pokédex entry. A quick scan, and he immediately understood why it was so afraid. It had once been abused by a group of cruel individuals. Although it had been rescued, the trauma left it unable to trust trainers, fearing humans in general. Johan sighed. Before Poplio's bubbles could reach him, Jengar casually caught them. Kaka. The round, purple ghost toyed with the bubbles, finding them rather amusing. Poplio. Poplio froze in confusion. Poplio. Johan crouched down, smiling gently at it. He released a subtle wave of aura. A warm, reassuring presence spread outward, gradually calming Poplio's nerves. Poplio. Meanwhile, Lana was pushing through the crowd, anxiously searching for Poplio. She had rescued this Poplio from Team Skull not long ago, but its past trauma made it hard for it to trust anyone. Today, Mallow had invited her to try Pastoria's famous Poke Puffs. She thought it would be a good idea to let Poplio taste them as well. But when a group of people approached them, Poplio panicked and ran away. Poplio! Mallow cupped her hands around her mouth and called out. After a bit more pushing through the crowd, Lana finally spotted Poplio. But when she saw what it was doing, she froze. Mallow, who had caught up, also stood in stunned silence. The once panicked Poplio was now shyly taking a Poke Puff from the hand of a handsome young man with a gentle smile. Take your time. There's more if you want, the young man said, his voice warm as he lightly patted Poplio's head. Poplio. The delicious Poke Puff made Poplio clap its fins happily, eyes forming crescent moons. That's... Mallow was shocked. It was her first time seeing Poplio so comfortable around a stranger. Even Lana, its trainer, had never seen it act this way. At that moment, Poplio noticed Lana and Mallow approaching. It hesitated, still afraid of the people in the crowd, but eventually waddled toward them. Poplio. Lana immediately scooped it up, finally breathing a sigh of relief. Pop, pop. The surrounding crowd, realizing there was no more commotion, gradually dispersed. You're Johan Sensei. Mallow rubbed her eyes, recognizing the young man. Actually, Johan had recognized them first. Two of Ash's future classmates at the Alola Pokemon School. And future trial captains, Lana, the water-type captain, and Mallow, the grass-type captain. Johan had a particularly strong impression of Lana. Because of her, Phoebe's reputation had plummeted, but also because of her, the world where Groudon suffered alone never came to be. Since they were rivals, it had to be fair. Groudon couldn't fly, and Kyogre had to be fished up. This girl, she was undoubtedly the god of fishing. As for Mallow, Johan also had an impression of her, mostly because her family ran a restaurant, and she was a great cook. However, she had a habit of experimenting with new ingredients, sometimes adding completely bizarre elements, like Thunderbolt-flavored dishes. A true master of cursed cuisine. Alola Pokemon School was full of hidden talents. Johan Sensei. Hearing Mallow's surprised tone, Lana also looked up and recognized him. Johan smiled. You know me? They both nodded in unison. The ever-enthusiastic Mallow explained. Professor Kukui often shows us your battle videos as training material. Professor Kukui. Johan nodded. The same guy who once invited him to Alola as a guest teacher, the Master Royal. Though, Johan's expression became slightly strange, using his battles as study material for kids. Was it really okay? Ha, that was a good joke. Johan chuckled dryly. Lana might seem quiet and reserved, but she had a playful side. She loved making exaggerated jokes, like how she once caught Kyogre, a Super Gyarados, or even Lugia while fishing. She also claimed that the Masked Royals' opponents included Dialga, Palkia, and Darkrai. Most people, After a brief moment of confusion, could tell she was joking. But some, like her younger sisters and Ash, always took her seriously. Johan was only laughing dryly because, even though he knew it was a joke, she could actually do it. Lana was in Pistoria for the fishing tournament, accompanied by her father. Her father was a fisherman. His gear and technique were top tier, but his luck was abysmal. He could barely catch anything. Lana's father wasn't a concern, but Lana herself was absolutely one of the tournament's top contenders. Seeing that Johan understood her joke, Lana smiled shyly and looked down. After chatting a bit more, Lana and Mallow learned that Johan was also participating in the tournament. But when they found out he didn't have a fishing rod or bait prepared, Lana, as a way to thank him for helping Poplio, immediately offered to lend him some gear. After finishing their poke puffs, the three of them headed to the Central Hotel in Pistoria City. Lana showed Johan the fishing gear she had brought. Teach this one should do. Lana pursed her lips and carefully selected what she considered to be her best and most perfect fishing rod. It was a collapsible rod with a light blue handle. With a press of a button, the rod extended. Once the line, reel, float, hook, and bait were attached, it was fully assembled. A very convenient, portable setup. Are you sure? Johan asked. It looked like her favorite rod. But Lana just smiled shyly. A true angler can catch Kyogre even with the simplest rod. Johan. She then took out a matching float, reel, and hook from her tackle box. Wait. Johan's eyes widened when he saw the misty-shaped fishing hook. Could this setup be the exact one she used to catch Kyogre? Hiss. Johan felt like he was witnessing a golden legend, a top-tier fishing setup. What's wrong? Lana asked. Ahem. Johan cleared his throat. That's Misty. Lana blushed slightly and muttered, I'm a fan of hers. When fishing, just attach the bait here, she explained softly, demonstrating the process. This is a special bait I made, designed specifically for Sinnoh's waters and fish. At that moment, Johan realized, with his top-tier gear, top-tier bait, and his own fishing skills, this tournament, he might actually win. Thanks in advance. Johan smiled. Forget about the rod Annabelle's colleague was going to lend him. A true angler needed top-tier equipment. The next day, the weather was perfect. The sea was calm, with gentle waves shimmering under the sunlight. Windgull glided across the sky, while Polyper dove in and out of the water, splashing in white arcs. Cynthia stood at the pier, her hair swaying in the breeze. She tucked a few strands behind her ear and smiled confidently. Pistoria's fishing tournament was about to begin, and Cynthia had brought out her prized fishing gear. Watching this picturesque scene, Johan couldn't help but feel a little more cheerful. The tournament had attracted many participants. Some, like Johan, had decided to join days ago. Others, like Lana, had traveled from different regions. Some had even planned for months in advance. The prizes were also generous. First place would receive a top-tier fishing rod co-developed by Devon Corporation and Canalave City, valued at several million poke dollars. Second and third place would get a shell bell and a water stone, respectively. Even those who didn't place in the top three would receive a high-quality citrus berry set as a consolation prize. With rewards this appealing, it was no wonder the tournament had so many competitors. However, with so many people gathered, there were also hidden dangers. As the highest-ranking officer present after Annabelle, Johan had already spotted a few international police colleagues discreetly signaling him from the crowd. Among them was handsome, dressed in full fishing gear and looking ready for action. Have you gathered all the intel? Johan asked. Cynthia smiled warmly. Lucian is handling it. Nearby, Lucian had set up a sunshade, a chair, and a table. Dressed in a suit, he sat with his legs crossed, reading a book. A massive pile of books surrounded him. It looked like he had a lot of research to do. Johan shook his head slightly. Ultimate Research Assistant Lucian activated. Next to him, Flint slumped in her chair, covered in bruises. Apparently, yesterday, she had unknowingly wandered into an angler's sacred fishing spot. Her loud battle challenges and blazing flames had scared away all the fish. This was basically a declaration of war. She had barely escaped with her life after nearly being beaten into repentance by every angler there. So today, she was completely drained. Aren't insects usually used as bait? Aaron, who had spent all day finding a fishing rod, looked at Johan and Cynthia's bait. Then he looked at his own container full of bugs. He scratched his head. Yesterday, he and his Pokémon had spent hours in the forest collecting these. Normal insects aren't very effective in these conditions, Johan explained. Everyone was using bait made from berries mixed with special ingredients to enhance aroma and dispersal. Oh, Aaron nodded. Then he glanced at his Dustox with a thoughtful expression. Dustox, Sigma, LLL. Kaka. Jengar, wearing sunglasses, leaned against Garchomp, whispering in its ear. The moment we hook a big one, we rush in and pin it down. Garchomp gave Jengar a side glance. Do you think too highly of them? No offense, but Johan and Cynthia look impressive, but they won't catch anything big. Jengar grinned. Kaka. Silly shark, that's where you're wrong. If there's no big catch, we'll make one ourselves. Garchomp suddenly understood. The two Pokémon exchanged knowing smiles. The tournament officially began. Many participants immediately set sail. The tournament offered boat rentals, with different sizes and models available. The Plus Edition fishing boats were said to have a big catch boost. Faster, sleeker, and, most importantly, more expensive. Johan had to admire the tournament's marketing strategy. Slap a plus on it, and suddenly they could charge way more. And people still rushed to rent them. These boats allowed anglers to reach prime fishing spots faster, including areas with stronger waves. And as every seasoned angler knew, bigger waves, bigger fish. Some contestants, however, chose to ride their Pokémon instead. But that had a downside. The movement from surfing could scare off rare water types. Lana and Mallow were riding a Lapras. Others rode Walrein, Swampert, Tentacruel, or even Mantine. Johan even saw one guy surfing on a Snorlax. That thing's making waves like a tsunami. But the most ridiculous sight was someone surfing on a Squirtle. Johan could tell. That Squirtle was seconds away from drowning. Handsome also noticed and silently glanced at his Krogunk. Krogunk. Johan, Cynthia, and Aaron rented a medium-sized boat and leisurely set off. Kaka. Jengar paddled gently, guiding them toward a prime fishing spot. At the judge's signal, countless fishing lines were cast into the water. Some people quickly reeled in water-type Pokémon. The tournament had a point system. Magikarp was worth 1 point. More uncommon Pokémon, like Lovedisc, Finneon, and Chinchou, had higher values. The highest-scoring Pokémon was Milotic. Johan considered, should I catch a water type today? Then, he felt a tug on his line. Excited, he reeled it in. An orange Magikarp flopped onto the boat. Johan, Cynthia, pulls up another Magikarp. The two exchanged glances. Well, at least neither of them was empty-handed. Meanwhile, beneath the sea, as the fishing tournament heated up, a submarine moved silently through the depths. This doesn't make sense. Johan turned to look at the pile of flopping Magikarp on the boat, along with a few Shelder and Goldeen. No need to guess. Other than the Magikarp, the rest were caught by Cynthia and Aaron. Top-tier golden fishing gear, top-tier bait. Did I sign some sort of contract with Magikarp? Something must be off. But for now, Johan couldn't figure out what the problem was. At the top of the leaderboard was Lana. She had already reeled in 2 Chinchou, a Lovedisc, 2 Starmie, and a bunch of other high-scoring water types, not to mention an absurd number of lower-point Pokémon. Forget it. I give up. Since he couldn't figure it out, Johan decided to just go with the flow. At least he wasn't going home empty-handed. Besides, his real goal today wasn't fishing. Marcia, from the shadow of the boat, Marcia Dow emerged, gazing at the pile of flopping Magikarp with a thoughtful look. Are we making Magikarp stew tonight? Magikarp stew didn't sound bad, but it had to be the biggest and fattest one. Marcia Dow's eyes swept over the pile of Magikarp before locking onto the largest and plumpest one. Slurp. Marcia Dow swallowed its saliva, and the Magikarp, sensing its gaze, shivered. Magikarp. Splash. It instantly used Splash Attack, sending water splattering all over Marshadow's face. Kaka. Asterisk Sigma for all. Jengar pointed at Marshadow and burst into uncontrollable laughter. Marsha! Underscore. Marshadow's eyes sharpened. Magikarp froze in fear. The next moment, a dazzling white light burst from its body. Marshadow blinked in confusion. Johan and the others also turned their heads, drawn to the sudden glow. Wait, did it just? Aaron wobbled his ahog. It evolved, Cynthia said with slight surprise. Johan instinctively looked at Jengar. Kaka, Kaka. Jengar waved its hands frantically. Not me. I swear. I didn't even touch it. It was Marshadow. Without hesitation, Jengar sold Marshadow out. Johan turned to the corner of the boat. Marshadow had just realized what happened. Seeing Johan's gaze, it panicked, turned around, and dove back into the shadows. Johan's eye twitched. Why does this always happen around me? Rayard! The expanding white light was followed by a deafening roar. It's a gigantic Gyarados. The announcer finally took notice of their boat. A normal Gyarados was about 6.5 meters long. But this one, originally a massive Magikarp, had grown to over 7.5 meters after evolving. Gyarados was already a high-scoring Pokémon, with its size bonus. Rayard! GLUB, GLUB. Splush! Johan's little fishing boat couldn't handle a Gyarados that huge. So Garchomp immediately yeeted it back into the ocean. When Gyarados surfaced again, it looked confused. It turned and saw Garchomp's expressionless face, and Jengar's menacing grin as it cracked its knuckles. This was not how it imagined its evolution going. Kaka, I'm happy for your evolution, but I didn't like your attitude earlier. Jengar put on its swim goggles and jumped in first. Blub, blub, blub. Garchomp snorted. A dragon like me has no business in the water. But before Jengar could reach Gyarados, it suddenly popped back up, eyes gleaming with excitement. Kaka, big toothy fish. It gestured wildly, puffing up its cheeks in exaggerated motion. Toothy fish? Johan blinked. How big? Kaka. Jengar pointed at Gyarados. Bigger than that. Bigger than a 7.5-meter-long Gyarados? Was it Kyogre? Johan glanced toward Lana's direction. The water was calm, so probably not. Or maybe Team Rocket's submarine? But weren't they still busy filming a movie? And let's be real, Team Rocket's taste in submarines leaned more toward Magikarp or Gyarados, not Sharpedo. Suddenly, Johan pulled out his phone and called Annabelle. Johan Sensei. Annabelle answered. Annabelle, do we have surveillance underwater? Johan asked. Underwater? Annabelle sounded confused. Her hesitation confirmed it. The international police hadn't set up any underwater monitoring. They were only watching the boats on the surface. What's going on? Cynthia noticed Johan's change in expression and asked. I think we've found the Pokémon Hunter gang, Johan said gravely. Pokémon Hunters? Cynthia's eyes widened slightly before her expression grew serious. Jengar, Johan called out. Kaka. Jengar floated on the surface. See if you could drag them out. Jengar turned to the dazed Gyarados and grinned wickedly. Kaka. It vanished into a cloud of black mist, reappearing on Gyarados' head. It patted Gyarados' crest. Behave and take me down there. Or else. Rayo Ward. Gyarados roared in fury and prepared to lash out. BZZZZT. Electricity crackled ominously from Jengar's palm, dancing right in front of Gyarados' eyes. Jengar's twisted grin reflected in its pupils, amidst the flickering blue lightning. Or else I'll fry you. Rayard. Gyarados immediately surrendered. Every Pokémon had a duty to capture criminals. It flipped over and darted toward the target, with Jengar proudly surfing on its back, like a ghostly warrior riding the waves. Milotic, Gastrodon, go help. Cynthia tossed 2 Pokeballs. Her Pokémon dove in and followed after Jengar and Gyarados. At the same time, the international police officers all received Annabelle's urgent message in their earpieces. All units, we've found the target. Keep your eyes on Jengar. Johan Sensei will bring them out. Handsome, who was rowing a boat, immediately straightened up. So the hunters really were sneaking through underwater. He had suspected it earlier, but lacked the means to confirm it. He turned to his Krogunk. Krogunk! Kaka! Jengar shouted. Fishing rod! Ghostly surfer Jengar zoomed past. Krogunk grabbed Handsome's fishing rod and threw it toward Jengar without hesitation. Then, with an evil grin, Jengar whipped the rod forward. The hook latched onto the giant Sharpedo. Kaka! Get over here! Sharpedo started surfacing, and the Pokemon hunters realized they had been found. Inside a massive submarine shaped like a Sharpedo. Boss, something's latched onto the hull. The leader of the Pokemon hunters smirked. Who cares? Just ram your way through. Full speed ahead. The sudden movement inevitably drew the tournament's attention. That's a giant Sharpedo. One contestant is locked in a battle with it. It's... When the announcer finally saw who was reeling in the Sharpedo, they froze. The one fishing is Jengar. The entire audience erupted. Meanwhile, Johan rode his Dragonite. Cynthia crouched on Garchomp, her golden hair whipping in the wind. And Aaron surfed in on his Masquerain. Let's lure them out of the tournament area first, Johan ordered. Understood. The international police all responded in unison. The hunt had begun. Seismitoad, use mud shot. A rough, bellowing voice rang out from the Sharpedo submarine. Moments later, clumps of mud shot straight toward Ninetales. At the same time, boom, boom, boom. The Sharpedo submarine rapidly launched several small submersibles, scattering in different directions to escape. Ooh! A haunting, ethereal cry echoed through the air. Snowflakes began to swirl as a biting blizzard howled across the ocean surface. Ice crystals spread across the water, and the incoming mud shots turned into frozen clumps, crashing into the ice with dull thuds. The howling blizzard threatened to freeze everything in its path. So strong. A member of the international police, riding a water scooter toward the battlefield, gulped nervously. He realized he could abandon the scooter and just walk on the frozen sea. In his earpiece, Johan's voice came through. Close the net. Yes, sir. The officer instinctively straightened his back and saluted, even though Johan couldn't see him. It wasn't just the international police. The Pastoria City Police, led by Officer Jenny, had also arrived from all directions, surrounding the Pokemon hunters. However, the hunters were strong. Not all of them had been frozen by Ninetales. Some were still fighting back. And not all of those escaping in the mini-submarines had been stopped. Damn it, they're getting away. 8 o'clock direction. 12 o'clock direction. 3 o'clock direction. Clearly, those escaping via mini-subs were likely the key figures of the Pokemon Hunter Syndicate. I'll handle the 8 o'clock group, Annabelle said, pressing her earpiece while riding Metagross. Metagross! With a flash of blue light, Metagross extended its psychic energy toward the fleeing submersible. At 12 o'clock, Aaron, dressed in a deep red suit, stood atop his Bronzong with a helpless sigh. Bronzong Trick Room. Hum. A spatial distortion spread outward. Aaron adjusted his glasses, sighing again. I just came to read some books. How'd I get roped into this? More importantly, how do you say no to Johan Sensei's request? Damn it, Flint. I won't forget this grudge. Bronzong Psychic. Meanwhile, Flint was still rowing a tiny fishing boat toward the fight. At 3 o'clock. Finally, our turn. Aaron grinned and tossed out a Pokeball. A gleaming red Sizer landed on the frozen battlefield. But as soon as the battle began, Aaron's expression shifted entirely. His voice became sharp and commanding. Sizer, close combat. Johan clicked his tongue in admiration. Wow, reliable, aren't they? Seeing Sinnoh as 3 future Elite Four members and its future champion all engaged in battle, Johan couldn't help but feel sorry for the Pokemon hunters. Even if they got thrown into jail, this would be a story they could brag about. Yeah, back in my day, it took Sinnoh's entire Elite Four and champion to take me down. Instant street cred in prison. However, even the tightest net has holes. 4 o'clock. Fast-moving target. A mini-sub was intercepted, but instead of stopping, it self-destructed. A massive Sharpedo burst from the water, and riding its back. Ha ha ha! You think you can catch me? Not in this lifetime. A brawny, scarred man leapt onto the Sharpedo's back. With a burst of aqua jet, he shot forward, rapidly gaining speed. It was an accelerate Sharpedo, and he was the leader of this Pokemon Hunter Syndicate. Johan frowned. That shouldn't be possible. There should be someone else. Then, he realized. Flint. He was still rowing her tiny boat toward them. Because they had tried to avoid causing too much of a disturbance, they had let the Sharpedo sub get too far out. And these Pokemon hunters had zero team spirit. The moment things went south, they all ran for their lives. Cynthia noticed the situation and called over Garchomp. I'll handle it, Johan said, taking a deep breath. An accelerate Sharpedo. Garchomp might struggle to keep up in the short term. And if Sharpedo dove underwater, Cynthia would be at a disadvantage. Cynthia looked at Johan for a moment before pressing her lips together and nodding. Be careful. She swiftly withdrew Milotic and shoved the Pokeball into Johan's hand. It'll help you. Johan nodded, accepting the Pokeball without argument. Then, with a swift motion, he recalled his Pokemon and leapt onto Dragonite's back. Kaka. Jengar whacked Gyarados on the head before flying over to Johan. All right, big guy. I'm leaving you in charge. I'll be back. Rayard, go get him, boss. Johan turned to Cynthia. I'm leaving this to you. Stay safe. Cynthia simply tied her hair up, flashing a confident smile. Don't worry. Johan suddenly felt bad for the Pokemon hunters. He remembered how Cynthia had single-handedly wiped out an entire army. Leaving her here was just giving her an excuse to go all out. Johan patted Dragonite, tightened his grip, and took a deep breath. Dragonite Dragon Dance. Extreme speed. Would he survive this? After all, according to Professor Oak, Dragonite could circumnavigate the Earth in 16 hours. Woo! Dragonite's eyes sparkled with excitement. Finally, a chance to show Johan real speed. With an explosive flap of its wings, Dragonite shot forward, its massive body barely slowing it down. Garchomp, watching from below, cracked its knuckles. A low, metallic grinding sound echoed through the air. Its expression was somewhere between rage and pure battle lust. Oh, another one dancing in front of me? Johan barely heard Cynthia's command before. The screams of Pokemon hunters echoed from below. They danced in front of Garchomp. They paid the price. With Dragon Dance, agility, and extreme speed stacked, Dragonite tore across the ocean, leaving massive waves in its wake. Johan's grip tightened. For a moment, he forgot to be scared of the speed. Pokemon hunters were the purest embodiment of evil in this world. They captured, sold, and abused Pokemon for profit. Johan had spent years treating Pokemon with psychological trauma, and many cases had been caused by hunters like these. The more he learned, the more he hated them. This wasn't just about Vulpix and NDD. This was for every Pokemon who had ever suffered at their hands. If I let you escape, I will never forgive myself. Meanwhile, the Pokemon hunter leader laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, you think you can catch me? Idiots. By having his men scatter, he had torn a hole in the net. This capture attempt is a joke. Holding on to Sharpedo's dorsal fin, he kept accelerating. But then, he felt it, a chilling, murderous intent creeping up behind him. He whipped his head around, his pupils shrinking in terror. Impossible. Johan was already right behind him. Dragonite smirked. Where do you think you're going? Dragonite, thunder. BZZZZZZZT. A golden bolt of lightning slammed into Sharpedo and its rider. Shit! The hunter leader screamed as electricity surged through him. He barely had time to recover before. Red light flashed. Ninetales landed on the frozen ocean. Ice spread across the water. And one by one, Johan's Pokemon surrounded him. Jengar, Tinkaton, Cubfu, Charcadet, Milotic. Johan stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. This area is a no-escape zone. The hunter leader shuddered. Johan Sensei's true colors have been exposed. No problem, right? On a seaside island near Canalave City, Officer Jenny glanced at her watch. Johan had been chasing for quite some time now. It'll be fine, Cynthia said softly, her gaze drifting toward the ocean. With Johan's strength, ordinary Pokemon hunters wouldn't even get a chance to fight back. This one shouldn't be much of a problem either, Annabelle added. All the other Pokemon hunters had already been apprehended, leaving only the last major target. He's coming. Looker closed his book, adjusted his glasses, and spoke. They looked up. On the water's surface, a path of ice slowly extended outward. Johan, leading with his Alolan Ninetales and Gengar, walked steadily along the frozen path. Behind him, the Pokemon hunter leader trailed lifelessly, drooling slightly from his slackened mouth. He seems very cooperative, Aaron remarked in surprise. Looker shot him a glance. Cooperative? More like his soul had been drained. Johan, walking on the ice, muttered to himself, I really should get a bike. Riding a bike on water. How cool would that be? Wherever he pedaled, the ice path would extend. Much flashier than flying on a Dragonite. And safer, too. Speaking of which, they should have Rotom bikes by now, right? Rotom. Rotom froze for a moment. Wait, was he about to ride me? As Johan neared the shore, he noticed 3 women waiting expectantly. He quickly straightened his expression. When there are 3 women together, trouble is bound to follow. Better tread carefully. The ice path extended to the shore. Before Annabelle or the international police could react, the hunter leader suddenly shivered, then burst into tears as he lunged at one of the officers. Quick, arrest me. Arrest me now. A collective question mark hovered over everyone's heads. They exchanged bewildered glances. What just happened? Johan chuckled dryly. Well, at least he's got a good attitude about it. Good attitude? Was that the issue here? No injuries? Cynthia asked. Johan shook his head. No injuries. As he spoke, he returned the Pokeball containing Milotic to Cynthia. All right. He turned to Annabelle. He knows some things about other Pokemon hunter groups. Before he could finish, the hunter leader blurted out, I'll confess. I'll confess to everything. Annabelle gave Johan an odd look. Maybe he was better suited for interrogation work. She had never seen a criminal so eager to cooperate. Officer Jenny had the same thought. In fact, Johan seemed like he'd fit in well with their family, great at tactical planning, helpful in investigations, and even had interrogation skills. Wasn't this the perfect Jenny son-in-law template? Feeling something was off, Johan quickly changed the subject. All right, let's go. We've still got a competition to finish. With that, he took Cynthia and Aaron back to the fishing tournament, leaving Annabelle and Officer Jenny to handle the situation. They, in turn, decided to report everything truthfully. Johan would surely receive a nice reward. On the way back, Johan suddenly frowned. Are we forgetting something? Meanwhile, Flint was still rowing toward the island. Let's congratulate the winner of this year's fishing tournament, Lana from Alola. In the end, the champion of the tournament was Lana. No surprise there. She even caught a wild Milotic in the final round, earning the legendary fishing set as her prize. Johan, on the other hand, managed to take second place thanks to a massive Gyarados and some connections, winning the Shell Bell item. Shell Bell. When a Pokemon holding this item successfully lands an attack, it restores HP equal to 1/8 of the damage dealt. In short, a lifesteal item. Johan thought for a moment. Any of his Pokemon could use it, but the one it suited best. Probably Cubfu. The little guy hadn't gotten a new toy in a while, and the Shell Bell fit perfectly with both Cubfu's single-strike and multi-strike techniques. If I equip 8 Shell Bells, does that mean I can achieve perfect lifesteal? After the awards ceremony, Johan returned the Kyogre fishing rod to Lana. Lana and Mallow then invited him to visit Alola. If you come to Alola, stop by my family's Aina kitchen. I'll treat you to a meal, Mallow said enthusiastically. She had no idea what kind of massive expense that invitation might bring, especially if Gengar came along. Shy and soft-spoken, Lana hesitated for a long time before finally squeezing out. I'll show you my technique for fishing up Kyogre. She was completely serious. Johan, please, keep your divine fishing skills to yourself. Somewhere, Archie was probably crying in a corner. Back at Looker's mansion, Johan got a call. Hey, Johan, where are you guys? Huh? Johan checked the caller ID. Oh, so that's what he'd forgotten, Flint. Ahem, we changed locations. I'll send you the coordinates. Awesome. Leave the strongest one for me. Before Flint could finish, Johan hung up and sent the location. Out at sea, rowing his small boat, Flint stared at the GPS coordinates. Something felt off. Wait, isn't this Looker's place? Rocket HQ, Viridian City. Boss, we're heading to Sinnoh. Matori's expression was a bit downcast as she spoke to Giovanni through the large screen. Giovanni swirled the red wine in his glass indifferently. Boss, while I'm away, please take care of yourself. Don't forget to eat on time. Giovanni, Meowth, are you trying to steal my job? The feline Pokemon shot Matori a hostile glare. Come on, is she trying to replace me? Ahem. Giovanni patted Meowth's back and asked, You're stationed in Sinnoh now? No, just a 7-day business trip. Then why do you sound like you're saying goodbye forever? I heard Johan's in Sinnoh too. Giovanni changed the subject. Yes. Matori's energy instantly returned. Seeing Johan again was always good news, exciting. Oh right, Matori suddenly remembered something. Lately, some people have been looking into Johan's identity again. The usual, Giovanni waved dismissively. Understood. Matori nodded. Rocket's latest operation had wiped out the Collectors group. With their newly acquired mining resources, they were about to open a new excavation site. A little extra manpower wouldn't hurt. And Johan's year-end bonus and gift. Are they ready? Giovanni asked. All set. Matori beamed. No way Johan will be disappointed. After all, the gift was personally selected by Giovanni himself. No problems there. Giovanni nodded. Go then, and be quick. Yes, sir. .. That night, Johan learned from Cynthia that their next destination was Iron Island. Located off Sinnoh's western coast, Iron Island was once rich in mineral resources like Oreburgh City. However, overmining had left it depleted. To protect the wild Pokemon living there, most of the island had been closed off. Only one ferry route, Canalave City to Iron Island, remained open. There's an ancient site there. Iron Ruins, Cynthia said. Iron Ruins? Johan vaguely recalled something from the games. Wasn't Regis Steele supposed to be sleeping there? In reality, that probably wasn't the case. But Iron Ruins did exist. Also, Canalave City's gym leader, Byron, was said to be training on Iron Island. Yet, he hadn't shown up during the Pokemon Hunter incident. That was definitely going to get him written up. The next morning, Johan and the others boarded a ferry to Iron Island. As they sailed, Looker recounted the events of the previous day to Flint. Flint, devastated, lamented. How did I miss out on such an epic moment? Sinnoh, Iron Island. Jengar tearfully bid farewell to Gyarados. Kakao, goodbye, my dear ride. Gar. Gyarados also shed tears of relief. Finally free. This was too much. Life was too hard. Seeing Gyarados cry, Jengar wiped its eyes and couldn't help but suggest. Kaka, how about I just catch you in a Pokeball? A Pokemon catching a Pokemon? Gyarados froze for a moment at the suggestion before diving deep into the water. Run. Fast. It splashed Jengar with water in the process. So cheeky. Jengar wiped its face. To enter the Iron Ruins, we need to meet someone first, Looker said as he led Johan and the others further onto the island. Cha! The Pokeball on Johan's waist suddenly popped open, and his Tinkaton, hammer in hand, appeared beside him. Her hammer buzzed like a scanner. Metal detected, and possibly valuable metal at that. Johan quickly pulled the little one back. That's private property. That's the Pokemon Center. Meanwhile, inside a house on Iron Island, a young man dressed in a suit and top hat, exuding a gentlemanly air, suddenly opened his eyes. Beside him, a Lucario meditating with closed eyes did the same. Man and Pokemon locked eyes, both seeing the same hint of surprise. Aura. It was the presence of another Aura Guardian. And not just any aura. It was pure, as if it came from the very source of Aura itself. So, he wasn't the only one in this world. Riley looked at Lucario, a rare excitement on his face, and spoke in a deep voice. Lucario, I am not alone in my path. Lucario nodded firmly. There was something else it wanted to say. That presence. It felt even purer and more familiar than Riley's own aura. If anything, Riley might actually be the junior one here, even though the newcomer's aura wasn't particularly strong yet. Let's go, Lucario. Time to welcome our guest. Riley stood up and opened the courtyard gate just as Johan and the others arrived. Johan narrowed his eyes slightly before realizing, Iron Island's Riley? The last known Aura Guardian? Suddenly, he understood why Looker brought them here. Iron Island, large as it was Riley's private property. Not only was he a mining tycoon, but he was also the island's owner. To enter the sealed mining tunnels that led to the iron ruins, they needed his permission. And Riley wasn't just anyone. He was a descendant of Sir Aaron from Cameron Palace, inheriting his aura. In a way, Johan and Riley's aura abilities shared the same lineage. After all, Johan's aura came from Aaron's disciple, Lucario, and from you, or rather, the Tree of Beginning, while Riley's aura came directly from Aaron himself. The question was, how much of Aaron's power had Riley inherited? Could he throw aura spheres by hand? I am Riley. Welcome to Iron Island. Riley tipped his hat with a smile. Mr. Riley, we are. Looker and Riley had some prior acquaintance, so after a brief introduction, he explained their purpose. Investigating the ancient giants. Riley appeared thoughtful, but he didn't refuse Looker's request. Instead, he readily agreed. Of course, no problem. He then led the group toward the central mountain of the island, the entrance to the iron ruins and once one of the mining tunnels. Along the way, Riley realized he had underestimated Johan. Johan's aura wasn't just purer than his. It carried a sacred presence that commanded reverence. However, Johan showed no intention of revealing that he possessed aura at all. So, Riley remained silent on the matter. After all, he himself rarely disclosed his aura abilities unless necessary. Except, why was that sacred aura growing stronger? It was almost like, at the back of the group, Johan's expression twitched. Hungry again? He discreetly channeled some aura into the rainbow feather. He wasn't sure if it was just his imagination, but under his aura's infusion, the rainbow feather seemed to be growing more alive. Surely it wouldn't hatch into a baby Ho-Oh, right? If it did, who would be considered the parent? Ho-Oh? Or him? Johan shook his head at the thought. It was just a feather. No way it could be that powerful. Once he sensed the feather was full, he stopped. But up ahead, Riley was shaken. That sacred aura was so in tune with Johan. It even seemed affectionate toward him. This man was undoubtedly a brave and righteous aura guardian. Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows far behind them, a small Marshadal leaned on a wooden stick, quietly observing Johan. It had long since grown used to the rainbow feather's presence. In fact, Marcia, that aura of his, what did it taste like? Even Marshadal was tempted to try it. Please wait a moment. I'll check if the tunnel is still safe. Near the summit, Riley spoke. Since the tunnels hadn't been used in ages, their condition was uncertain. To ensure safety, he decided to inspect them first. Much appreciated, Looker said. The group took a seat on nearby stone benches. So, how strong is this Riley guy? Drake asked the question that interested him most. Not weak. Before Looker could answer, Cynthia spoke first. Indeed, Looker nodded. If he wanted, he could easily be a gym leader in Sinnoh. And, Johan silently added, he might even reach the Elite Four level one day. Drake's eyes lit up. If he's that strong, I have to challenge him. Johan noticed Cynthia subtly exhale. He nearly laughed. Seems like even Cynthia was getting fed up with Drake's constant challenges. Fair enough. After being challenged over 100 times by the same person, anyone would be annoyed. Cha! Cha! Tinkaton swung her hammer, searching excitedly. And she actually found something. Kaka! Jengar's eyes sparkled. It leapt out of Johan's shadow and, in a swimming motion, dove underground where Tinkaton had pointed. Moments later, it popped back up, nodding furiously. Cha! Tinkaton called over Ninetales. Oh, Ninetales stretched before trotting over. Caca. Jengar pointed to the ground, ready to dig. Johan noticed them, but didn't stop them. The area was abandoned. It should be fine, right? Oh, Ninetales, using dig, quickly tunneled underground. Jengar and Tinkaton followed. A short while later, Ninetales burst out from another location, shaking itself clean of dirt and dust. Tinkaton climbed out, grinning, holding a high-quality metal chunk. The trio cheered and high-fived. Excited by their success, Tinkaton eagerly resumed searching. Then, a loud, gruff voice boomed out. This hole. A towering, muscular man in a gray short-sleeved shirt, black cape, and holding a shovel knelt beside the hole Ninetales had dug, his face full of awe. I love this hole. His expression was as if the hole were a work of art. Johan and the others turned toward the voice. Jengar and Ninetales glanced over as well. Gym leader Byron? Looker recognized the man. It was Byron, the gym leader of Canalave City. Yesterday, Annabelle had tried contacting him during the Pokemon Hunter operation, but he had been unreachable, likely busy digging for fossils deep underground. Who dug this? I must learn from them. Byron asked, eyes shining. Oh, Ninetales hesitantly raised a paw. Byron rushed forward to grab it, only for Ninetales to dodge and scurry behind Johan. Oh, is this guy okay? Johan's mouth twitched. No, this was just Byron being Byron. Fossils? Fossils held no appeal for Johan, even if they were revived into Pokémon. Aside from Aerodactyl, the rest were just okay, unless it was the adorably ugly Arctivish. But Aerodactyl, Johan wasn't ready to raise one yet. Wait, that's not right. He might not care about fossils, but his student, Steven, was obsessed with them. If he could get his hands on a fossil that Steven didn't have, knowing Steven's personality, he'd probably repay him tenfold, maybe even 100-fold. Johan quickly shook his head. As a teacher, he couldn't expect anything in return from his student. This was just about getting Steven a gift. Giving to Steven, a man who gifts rare stones left and right. A present that might just be a first in the entire Pokemon world. Besides, they were just waiting here anyway. So, Johan accepted Byron's challenge. Given the nature of the battle, they agreed on a 1v1 match. Winner takes all. Hearing there was a battle, Drake immediately perked up. Jengar, on the other hand, plopped down beside Cynthia, pulled a bucket of popcorn out of its dimensional storage, and got ready to watch. Caca. Jengar's eyes darted mischievously as it grinned and offered some popcorn to Cynthia. Cynthia chuckled, not hesitating to take a few kernels after patting Jengar's head. Aren't you battling? She asked between bites. Jengar shrugged and pointed toward Tinkaton, who was warming up by doing push-ups with her hammer on her back. Obviously, it wasn't his turn. Tinkaton was already getting hyped. Since Byron was a Steel-type gym leader, that meant it was her fight. Cynthia nodded thoughtfully. Popcorn. Drake spotted the popcorn in Jengar's hands and reached over, only for Jengar to dodge. Drake blinked in confusion. Jengar rolled its eyes. Caca, if you want some, go make your own. That handed Cynthia another handful before munching on some itself. Drake suddenly felt targeted. Looker, however, was much smarter. He simply leaned against a stone pillar, arms crossed, not even sparing the popcorn glance. That stuff was dangerous. Even though this is just a friendly match, I won't hold back. Byron, shovel in hand, spoke with a commanding presence. Then he tossed out a pokeball. With a flash of red light, a Bastiodon appeared, resembling an armored dinosaur with a heavy metal shield for a face. Dust swirled as it landed. Bastiodon, the shield Pokémon. A rock/steel-type Pokémon revived from fossils. It has high defensive capabilities. Rotom Dex popped out from beside Jengar, providing information about Bastiodon. But for ancient Pokémon, the Pokédex's data wasn't always complete. Cha! Steel-type. Tinkaton's eyes sparkled. Johan smirked. You're up, Tinkaton. Cha! Tinkaton grinned, hoisting her hammer and stomping onto the battlefield. Gar! Boom! Sensing the threat, Bastiodon slammed its massive shield-like head onto the ground, standing firm like an ancient fortress. The battle began. Byron's battle demeanor instantly shifted. His previous eccentricity disappeared. Bastiodon, iron defense. Bastiodon already had absurd defenses, boasting a 168 base defense stat, and even its special defense hit 138. Of course, its incredible defenses came at the cost of poor attack and speed. To maximize its strengths, defense-based tactics were the way to go. Gar. Bastiodon's shield glowed with metallic light, further boosting its already sky-high defense. But almost simultaneously, Johan's voice rang out. Tinkaton, swords dance. The sharp clang of steel echoed as Tinkaton swung her hammer, a dark red aura forming a blade-like pattern around her. One boosted attack, the other boosted defense. It seemed like they were back to square one. Johan's ability to read and counter his opponent's tactics is easily among the best in the Pokémon world. Looker couldn't help but comment. If it were Drake, he'd probably just charge and blindly. That might work in the short term, but over time, the one who stacked more buffs would have the advantage. Johan, however, seemed to already know how Byron would play. He gave precise commands without hesitation, almost as if he were predicting Byron's every move. Drake pouted. If it were me, I'd just use a big fire blast. See? This was the difference between a brawler and a strategist. Meanwhile, the battle continued. Bastiodon, heavy slam. Heavy slam. Damage increases based on the weight difference between the user and the target. Johan raised an eyebrow. Using heavy slam on Tinkaton? To Byron, it seemed like a logical choice. Bastiodon was massive, covered in heavy metal plating, and he had trained it to be even heavier than usual. Tinkaton? A small, adorable pink gremlin. How much could she possibly weigh? One hit, and she'd probably cry for days. Right? Johan's voice was calm. Block it. Chop. Tinkaton smirked, raising her hammer single-handedly as Bastiodon charged. Boom. Bastiodon's massive shield slammed into Tinkaton's hammer with a thunderous impact. But then, Byron's eyes widened in disbelief. Tinkaton didn't even budge. Instead, Bastiodon staggered backward. Bastiodon itself looked utterly dumbfounded. Who was a real fortress here? It felt like it had just crashed into a steel wall. Ka, Sigma. Jengar pointed at Bastiodon and laughed. You want to compete in weight with our Tinkaton? That hammer alone weighed more than most Pokémon. Cha. Tinkaton grinned and charged forward. Why guard? Byron ordered. Bastiodon quickly raised a massive protective barrier, preparing to block the attack. A towering, earth-toned energy wall appeared in front of it. But then, Tinkaton's eyes flashed mischievously. Johan smirked. Feint. Tinkaton pretended to swing her hammer, only to suddenly sidestep, looping behind Bastiodon in an instant. She struck before Bastiodon could react. Johan's signature move, predictive reads, Looker murmured. It feels like Johan understands Byron really well, Lucian added. Cynthia tucked her hair behind her ear. More like, Johan understands Byron's tactics really well. Looker realized she was right. After all, Johan's first viral video was of him commanding Skarmory against Lance's Aerodactyl. That battle didn't just use spikes. It incorporated iron defense plus body press tactics, much like Byron's style. And Feint not only broke wide guard, it also bypassed Bastiodon's sturdy ability. Bang! Body press. Byron commanded. As expected. Brick break. Tinkaton swung her hammer down as Bastiodon lunged. Crash! A deep crack split across Bastiodon's shield-like face. This was Tinkaton's chance. Finish it. Gigaton hammer. Cha! Tinkaton swung her hammer, slowly at first, then suddenly accelerating with incredible force. The sheer weight and momentum warped the air around it. Byron's face turned serious. He sensed the danger. But danger was also an opportunity. Bastiodon counter. If Bastiodon endured the hit, it could return double the damage. But that was only if. Boom! A meteor-like impact cratered the battlefield. Dust exploded into the air. Drake swallowed. That was brutal. If Bastiodon survived, the counter damage would be catastrophic. But as the dust cleared, Bastiodon lay on the ground, KO'd in one hit. A critical strike, instantly knocked out. Tinkaton, meanwhile, was rummaging through the rubble. Cha! Where'd that piece of metal go? Byron was momentarily stunned. Then he grinned. That was an amazing hit. We lost. He handed Johan a Sherelden fossil and a mine badge. Johan blinked. Did he just unlock a Sinnoh badge collection side quest? Mr. Byron. Riley returned from scouting ahead and greeted Byron with a smile. Oh, Riley. Byron let out a hearty laugh. The two were quite familiar with each other. In fact, Byron had once invited Riley to become the gym leader of Oreburgh City instead of his son, Rourke, who is now both the Oreburgh gym leader and the leader of the ancient Pokémon exploration team. However, Riley had declined, and with Rourke taking up the mantle, Byron quietly relocated to Canalave City to serve as its gym leader. Because of this, there was still an unresolved rift between father and son. The path is clear. We can head in, Riley announced. You're going into the Iron Ruins? Byron, now aware of Johan's group's intentions, grinned confidently. Don't worry. I dug that tunnel myself. It's perfectly safe. Why did that sound so ominous? Byron didn't accompany them. Upon learning about what had happened in Canalave City, he decided to return there, feeling guilty about missing the incident. With Riley leading the way, Johan and the others ventured through the dimly lit, lengthy tunnel and into the Iron Ruins. For Johan, this was his first time inside an ancient ruin. Naturally, he was curious. Upon entering, Cynthia and Looker immediately began analyzing the stone tablets, carvings, and architecture, comparing them with the information they had gathered. According to legend, Cynthia studied a broken stone tablet, cross-referencing it with her notes as she softly recounted. A massive meteor struck the Earth, bringing catastrophe to the entire continent. The impact was so great that it even affected the land's tectonic plates. Her eyes gleamed with excitement, like a scholar finally piecing together a complex puzzle, or a detective uncovering the truth before the climax of a mystery novel. In the midst of disaster, a colossal ancient giant emerged from the earth. Using the land's ice, rock, and steel, pure elemental energies, it created new ancient giants. With their help, the giant deity divided the continent, shaping the 4 regions we know today. Looker adjusted his glasses. This aligns almost perfectly with Johan's previous research and theories. Johan, meanwhile, was holding back Tinkaton to keep her from smashing things and causing a cave-in. He added, or maybe the giant just punched the continent a little too hard and broke it apart. And honestly, Regigigas creating the Regi Trio was like a kid making action figures. It even left at least 3 in every region. Looker froze. He pushed his glasses up again, as if trying to compose himself. Were they really tracing the footsteps of such a terrifying giant? Would they even survive if they found it? Cynthia continued reading. A fragment of the meteor remained in Veilstone City. I know about the Veilstone meteorites. Drake raised his hand excitedly. Finally, something he could contribute. His hometown was Sunnyshore's City, and Veilstone City wasn't far from there. Back when he was traveling, he had visited Veilstone and seen the meteorites firsthand. What do they look like? Looker asked. Drake paused, scratching his head. Well, they look like rocks. Everyone sighed. Johan spoke up. The meteorites aren't directly connected to the ancient giants. They were just the catalyst for the disaster. Meteorites were a recurring theme in the Pokémon world. The meteor in Hoenn led to Mega Evolution. The one in Sinnoh shattered the land. The meteor in Unova brought the Tau Trio. And the one in Galar brought Eternatus and Dynamax energy. But Sinnoh's meteor seemed to be the largest. Not only did it fracture the land and cause massive tectonic shifts, it also prompted Regigigas to move the continents. The geological shifts even led to the extinction of the Terrapagos species, leaving only one survivor, which later formed Zero Lab and the Terrestrial phenomenon. Basically, almost every major event in Pokémon history could be traced back to a rock falling from the sky. As for the 4 meteorites in Veilstone City, their primary function now was attracting Deoxys and letting it change forms. Johan, you study meteorites too? Looker asked in surprise. Johan waved it off. I just know a little. A little. Looker was beginning to understand. The highest level of mastery was knowing a little. He had to admit, Cynthia was brilliant for bringing Johan along. It saved them so much unnecessary effort. For instance, now, they probably didn't need to bother going to Veilstone at all. Cynthia glanced at Johan before continuing her translation. When the land finally settled, the ancient giant fell into slumber. The place where it rests is Snowpoint City. Snowpoint Temple. Looker blurted out. Cynthia frowned slightly. They had long known about the legends surrounding Snowpoint Temple. However, those legends contradicted the historical evidence they had uncovered. According to Snowpoint Temple's myths, a massive volcanic eruption once shook Snowpoint City. Regigigas awakened from the ice, leading the Regi trio to quell the volcano. Afterward, it returned to sleep, and the people built Snowpoint Temple in gratitude. It still fits, Johan mused after a moment of thought. The legend in Snowpoint Temple might just be the last time Regigigas woke up, one of multiple awakenings. True. Cynthia's brows relaxed. She murmured, so that means Regigigas might actually wake up again. Johan's eyebrow twitched. What was that supposed to mean? Was the Sinnoh League planning to wake it up? Why? Regigigas had always played the role of a protector in the myths. But whether it was truly benevolent was another question entirely. And forcibly interrupting its sleep? That sounded like a terrible idea. Snowpoint City, maybe even all of Sinnoh, could be in danger. Sensing Johan's concern, Cynthia explained. It's because Snowpoint's dormant volcano has shown signs of activity. We need to be prepared. That made sense. So that was why the Sinnoh League had tasked Professor Carolina with researching the ancient giants. They feared that if the volcano erupted again, Regigigas would wake up. Or rather, the Sinnoh League needed to confirm whether Regigigas was actually inside Snowpoint Temple. And based on Cynthia's research, from historical records in Iron Island and ancient texts in Oreburgh mine, Regigigas was almost certainly sleeping beneath Snowpoint Temple. So in the end, we still have to go to Snowpoint City, Cynthia concluded, looking at Johan. Her grandmother, Professor Carolina, was already there. The two had split up. Professor Carolina was directly investigating Snowpoint Temple, while Cynthia was tracing history to confirm Regigigas' exact location. But in the end, everything pointed to Snowpoint City. Johan groaned. No matter what, they were still heading there, huh? Well, as long as Hunter J didn't get involved, Regigigas probably wouldn't wake up. It was just some magma activity. The volcano probably wouldn't actually erupt. Fine, Johan sighed. He pressed a hand over his heart, feeling the warmth of the rainbow feather. He silently prayed. Ho-Oh, protect us. Sinnoh region, Snowpoint City. A thick blanket of snow covered the entire city, with its northernmost location and the cold winds from Mt. Coronet. Snowpoint City was now at its coldest time of year. Night fell. Snow piled up along the roadsides, cleared by city workers. The warm glow of street lamps and houses added a faint coziness to the freezing town. Johan, aren't you cold? Lucian shivered, rubbing his arms as he huddled closer to Drake and his flint. Johan looked at the two, arms wrapped tightly around themselves, and smirked. Weaklings. Drake was furious, but he couldn't even step a meter away from Flint's flames. Cynthia giggled behind her hand. Johan simply said, "This is nothing." Just as they checked into their hotel, Johan's phone rang. Mattori, we've arrived in Sinnoh. Where are you? Year-end bonus? The Academy hadn't even issued its year-end rewards yet, but Team Rocket had already sent theirs? No doubt about it. Team Rocket really knew how to take care of its people. Couldn't you just send it over with a delibird? Johan asked. The item is quite valuable. It must be delivered to you in person, Mattori replied, sounding unusually serious. This only made Johan more curious. What kind of year-end reward had they prepared for him? Surely not a Pokémon? All right then, I'm in Snowpoint City right now. Before he could finish, Mattori interrupted, sounding surprised. Johan, you're in Snowpoint City? What do you mean? From her tone, "Wait, are you in Snowpoint City?" Johan asked in return. "Of course," Mattori said as if it were obvious. "We have a few scenes to shoot that require a snowy backdrop." Scenes? Johan thought about it carefully, and there were some scenes in his script that needed a snowy setting. It made sense. Aside from Sinnoh, Hoenn didn't get much snow due to MT Chimney. Even when it did snow, it was usually too light for the desired effect. Kanto and Johto did have snowfall, but their best locations were in MT Silver. And sending Team Rocket to shoot a film on MT Silver, that was basically asking for a death wish. Besides, according to Johan's script, the setting was in a mountain villa, and there weren't many of those in snowy mountain ranges. So Snowpoint City was indeed the best option. "Ahem, all right then. Send me the location, and I'll come find you tomorrow," Johan said. It was best to avoid being seen with Team Rocket too often. Sure, Mattori and the trio's identities hadn't really been exposed, but with those three, you could never be too careful. Understood. Shortly after, Mattori sent Johan their current filming location. Sinnoh, MT Coronet, a magnetic field disturbance zone. A middle-aged man with short light blue hair, a black suit, and nearly invisible eyebrows stood in the snow, his expression cold and detached. He threw out 2 Pokeballs, summoning a Nose Pass and a Magneton. Under the influence of MT Coronet's special magnetic field, both Pokemon immediately erupted with a blinding evolutionary glow. The powerful magnetic surge caused the surrounding snowstorm to intensify, even triggering small avalanches in the mountains. But the man remained calm, completely unaffected. He watched as the evolution light faded, revealing a Probopass and a Magnezone. Then, with a flick of his hand, he gave an order: "Destroy it." ZZZZT. Electric waves pulsed from Probopass and Magnezone. The powerful electromagnetic field they unleashed violently disrupted the area's natural magnetic field, shattering it completely. Rumble. The ground shook as the altered magnetic field disrupted the mountain's balance. Deep within the earth, a force began stirring. Something ancient, something powerful. But the man simply calmly retrieved his Pokeballs and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. "Hello, it's me, Jay." A woman's voice answered on the other end. If Johan were here, he would have instantly recognized. This man was Cyrus, the leader of Team Galactic, currently posing as a prominent Sinnoh businessman. And the woman on the call? The infamous Pokemon hunter, Jay, the leader of one of the largest Pokemon hunter organizations in the world. Cyrus spoke flatly. "I've done what I promised. The rest is up to you." After a brief silence, Hunter Jay responded, "I understand. Once I shake off the damn League enforcers, I'll capture the Pokemon you want." 2 days ago, the Pokemon hunters Johan helped capture had leaked one of Hunter Jay's secret bases to the Sinnoh League. As a result, Hunter Jay had been relentlessly pursued by both the Sinnoh League and Interpol. Though she was too skilled to be caught so easily, the attacks had significantly hurt her operations. To escape, she had struck a deal with Cyrus. If Team Galactic could create a distraction for the Sinnoh League, she'd capture any Pokemon Cyrus wanted. And since Cyrus wasn't ready to reveal himself just yet, he used another method. For years, Team Galactic had been scouring MT Coronet, searching for the Spear Pillar. During that time, Saturn, their lead scientist, had discovered this magnetic anomaly. After numerous tests, they confirmed destroying this magnetic field would destabilize MT Coronet, triggering environmental disasters across Sinnoh. By creating chaos, they could divert the League's attention, allowing Hunter Jay's team to escape unnoticed. After hanging up, Cyrus stood atop the mountain, looking down at Sinnoh. Disgust flickered in his eyes. Consider this a small wake-up call for this flawed world. The next day, the sky was clear, but the wind and snow from MT Coronet seemed stronger than before. Sunlight glittered off the swirling snowflakes, casting a prismatic glow over Snowpoint City. The entire city looked like it was wrapped in a dreamlike veil. Another beautiful day, Johan sighed, stretching as he stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. Frost had crystallized on the glass, but inside the hotel, it was warm and cozy. Good work, Charcadet, Johan praised. Goka. Charcadet grinned. Suppressing its internal heat emissions was good training. It tossed the last of its charcoal stash into its mouth, crunching down loudly. Johan twitched. Great. It had already finished one of its 2 remaining charcoals. At this rate, he'd have to stock up soon. Money just disappears in the blink of an eye. Johan sighed. Hopefully, Team Rocket's year-end bonus can make up for it. Ooh. Ninetails stretched lazily on the bed, scattering small ice crystals. Not just Charcadet. Even Ninetails was improving its control over its natural cold aura. Kaka. Wrapped in its giant spirit cloth, Jengar rolled over on the ceiling, still asleep. Judging by how refreshed it looked, last night, the city's wild Pokémon must have gotten a very friendly visit. As Dragonite blinked in confusion, Johan suddenly landed a flurry of punches on its belly, feeling refreshed. With the team awake, they ate breakfast, said goodbye to Cynthia's group, and headed out. Following Rotom's navigation, Johan soon arrived at Team Rocket's location, a villa on the outskirts of Snow Point City. From a distance, he spotted the trio suspiciously burying something in the snow. Yet, they hadn't noticed him approaching. You guys, at the sound of his voice, the trio jumped and whirled around. When they saw him, Johan, ×3, S1 ants. They immediately pounced, clinging to him. Johan felt his eye twitch. What had he just walked into?
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.